Hello, dear viewers. Support me by subscribing to my channel and share my video if you like it. And also, make sure you comment your thoughts. Now let's start the video.
Tonks wasn't sure what it was about Remus Lupin, but every month saw her arriving at Hogwarts just that little bit earlier and had her leaving later too. Using the excuse of passing on information about classes might fool Remus for a while yet, but she wasn't kidding herself. She'd never met anyone quite like him. He was smart, witty, and his self-deprecating sense of humor never failed to make her smile. It was such a refreshing change from some of the boastful macho assholes in the aura department who were always trying to impress her, even more so now, since the chamber incident. That Tonks was continually seeing Remus at his worst just intrigued the female aura all the more. What would he be like when he wasn't just about to transform into a dark creature? She did have a plan to see him outside Hogwarts, and not at this particular point in the lunar calendar either. It was time to let him know of these plans. I understand we'll be seeing more of each other over the holidays. Sirius has roped all of the Tonks family into going to Florida with the gang. She was sure that news had raised a small smile, but his answer gave nothing away. With all the friends they've invited along, a few more adults will certainly be welcome. With Susan there too, Amelia will be delighted that an Order of Merlin holding Aurore will be accompanying the group. Both had been so engrossed in their conversation, Padfoot was able to sneak right up to them before transforming. You'll both be together in Sweden too, especially since you're our best man and bridesmaid. Too loud, what? Said Sirius, backpedaling. Sorry, Tonks. I thought Henrika had asked you. She wants to see me after I lock you two up for the night. You've just left her though, didn't she tell you that? The marauder sported a wide grin as he answered. We didn't have much time for talking, Remus interrupted Sirius's boasting. And just when were you going to ask me? This dented Sirius smile. I didn't think I needed to ask you. Who else was going to be my best man? Oh, I thought you were going to ask Harry. Don't be stupid. Why would I choose a handsome goblin to stand beside me when I can have you there to make the groom look good? Tonks was affronted and was just getting ready to rip Sirius a new one when Remus burst into laughter. He's frightened Henrika will finally come to her senses and ditch the old mutt. Too true, I'm not taking any chances. That woman is the best thing that ever happened to me, and I can't wait to get a ring on her finger. Tonks now recognized this form of gallows humor for what it was, this pair's way of dealing with a situation that must be horrendous for both of them. Sirius was going to have to be a helpless witness while his best friend suffered the pain and indignity of becoming a werewolf, and their banter probably developed over years of facing this together. As they made their way through the tunnel under the Whomping Willow, Tonks was pleased that she'd just been presented with yet another opportunity to get to know the enigma that was Remus Lupin better. Since the best man and bridesmaid were required to dance with each other too, it wasn't going to be a hard decision for her when Henrika asked the question. Peter emerged from the tunnel and stood on French soil. It actually felt really good to escape from Britain. Peter was smart enough to know, though, that it was only the country he'd escaped from. His troubles would follow him around the globe. With the resources Potter and Black had at their disposal, he would soon be a dead wizard, unless he could once more gain the protection of his master. Discovering where the Dark Lord was hiding would be an impossible task, except that this Death Eater had help not available to anyone else. That fateful night his master had been banished. Peter had been the first person to race into the partially destroyed house in Godric's Hollow. Finding young Harry still alive was an even greater shock than discovering his master was no more. His master's wand was lying there though, and Peter had grabbed the precious item before barely making it back out the house undiscovered as a distraught Hagrid arrived. He removed that wand from his tattered robe and laid it flat on the palm of his hand. Point me. The wand spun a couple of times while seeking its master before settling down on a bearing that was roughly east. Peter lined himself up with a landmark on the same bearing before the wand was once more safely stowed away. He would certainly make better time as Peter, but Wormtail would be the safer option until he reached some less populated areas. With no idea of the distance he would have to travel before he reached his master, the rat put its best paw forward to continue his quest. Even finding his master and helping him return to life was fraught with danger. The wand he had safely tucked away on his person had killed its fair share of Death Eaters too. The difference was that, if Peter did nothing, he would eventually be captured and only one fate awaited him then. He might still die at the Dark Lord's side, or even by his master's own wand. The difference being he would have a chance to live first. When Peter looked at the problem like that, his decision was not a hard one. "We have some hard decisions to make." Padma was lying flat on her back, struggling for her next breath, and knackered from their sword practice. She was receiving messages of pain from places in her body she didn't even know had muscles, and silently swearing to curse her betrothed for suggesting they should really learn how to use their new swords. Since Neville was currently faring little better, it was left to Harry to ask what those decisions were. "We all have to decide on our course electives for next year, and also what to do about the Marauders." That last one certainly got the other three's attention, so Hermione focused on that first. "We set up the Marauders because Hogwarts had another crap defense teacher. Now we've got Professor Lupin. What do we do come September? I don't think there is any way we can fit 2 classes a week into our schedules, nor take 2 years' worth of students at the same time, especially since they will be at different levels." The groan came from Padma as she now saw the problem. "The new first years, I don't want to abandon the current Marauders. That's just not an option. But how can we tell the new first year they're not welcome?" Harry then added to their potential problem. "Don't forget, the new first years will have another 2 Potter Scholarship students amongst them. How could I say no to someone I'm effectively sponsoring?" Neville was also lying on the floor knackered. His eyes may be shut, but he was listening to every word spoken. What if we kept working with our Marauders, and the 4 guys took their own class of the new first years come September? That idea found favor with all of them, but Hermione then took Neville's solution 1 stage further. "If we're saying this club should now run with every new intake of students, we need to make plans. How about getting some of our friends involved now, working alongside us and the guys so they could be ready to take their own class of first years later?" This was an idea that Harry really liked. Here was a legacy they could be proud to leave Hogwarts with. "I think we need to approach Augusta and McGonagall with this, get it formalized. By the time we're ready to leave Hogwarts, there could be a Marauders Club running almost every night of the week. If that means we won't be able to get this room to practice fencing, then it gets my vote. Oh, and no, I am never getting up in the middle of the bloody night to exercise or wave a sword at someone. Until I've seen you when you get up in the morning, I wouldn't trust you anywhere near a sharp object. Does Neville know how grumpy you are? Neville, honey, remind me when I'm not half dead that I owe Granger an ass-kicking." "Yes, dear. Can you help me up first, or will we just sleep here?" "Neville Longbottom, the first night we spend together will not be on a cold stone floor with both of us too knackered to do anything. It had better be a damned sight more romantic than this." Hermione bent down to help her best friend to her feet. "It's really only this bad for the first couple of weeks. Then the pain goes away? Oh no, your body just gets used to it. Granger, what kind of a friend are you? You don't even have the decency to lie to me." Harry was also helping a groaning Neville to his feet. "I haven't felt this bad since Professor Weasley's very first lesson. I seem to remember the second one was just as bad." "You use different muscles for fencing, Neville. Just be thankful we're using swords and not battle axes. The training for that is brutal." Padma was now on her feet and attempting to glower. "See, Hermione, that's how you do it. Tell us how lucky we are and that the situation could be much worse." "Oh, I was going to tell you that Betsy gives wonderful massages, but if you'd rather..." Padma spun round and kissed Neville. "Good night, see you in the morning. Come on, Hermione. Let's go." Hermione found herself being dragged out of there by a stiff-gaited Padma, leaving 2 laughing boyfriends behind. "Sorry, Neville, I know nothing about massages and the goblin cure can be as bad as the pain of sore muscles. I'm almost afraid to ask what it is." "Oh, nothing sinister, just lying in a bath of ice water. After 10 minutes you don't feel a thing." Neville could quite believe that. "I think I'll stick to hot baths. And one of them sounds great just about now." After dropping Neville off at Gryffindor, Harry entered Ravenclaw to find Hermione waiting on him. Padma's getting a massage just now. It will put her to sleep, and she'll feel much better in the morning. Sounds like you're speaking from experience there. I didn't even know elves could do that. Neither did I until Betsy offered. When I was back in Crawley at the end of last summer, I was really physically pushing myself hard. I was in severe pain one night, missing you like crazy and lying in bed crying. Betsy helped my aching muscles and told me what you had been up to all day. She really got me through a tough time. I just can't understand why anyone would mistreat an elf. They're so loyal and trusting. They're certainly part of our family. Mum and Dad adore Dobby, and he just loves working for them. I just wish there was some way to ensure all elves were treated as they should be. Harry leaned forward and kissed his bonded gently on the lips. When you get so passionate about something your eyes actually sparkle. It's so beautiful, I just had to kiss you. This led to her cheeks blushing, and those same eyes avoiding his. Sorry, Hermione, I didn't mean to embarrass you. You didn't, Harry. It was just my mind rushing off in another direction. With Harry remaining silent, Hermione was left to explain her remark. Every time you do or say something like that, it does funny things to my insides. I never expected to be kissing anyone at Hogwarts, and then I met you. You are mine and I am yours. I am also the happiest witch in the world. I just keep wishing we were a bit older so we could practice some of the things running through my mind. Her head was down and that blush grew deeper still as Harry wrapped Hermione in his arms. You are mine and I am yours. That means we'll eventually get to do whatever is running through that wonderful mind of yours. Add in what's running through my head and it will take us years to do it all. I'm looking forward to spending those years with you. Hermione's head had shot up, and she was now looking him in the eye, searching for any sign he was just saying these things to make her feel better. I'm sitting here with a beautiful girl in my arms, a girl who is my mate and wife-to-be. Do you think you're the only one with thoughts like that? I think it's our hormones, Hermione. I stop them from getting away from me by knowing that you are mine, and the day we both want will come soon enough. This will shortly be our second summer together and I don't intend to spend one day of it away from you. He didn't get to say any more. Harry was too busy with Hermione kissing him. They eventually parted, and a rather breathless Hermione attempted to look on the bright side. 3 more summers after this one and we'll never have to say goodnight at the stairs again. You're getting the hang of this, Hermione. That sounds so much better than 4 and a bit years. Another year she'd have to wait. Another year because they wanted to see safety protocols introduced to cut down on the injuries and eliminate any possibility of fatalities. Dolores didn't want to see less fatalities. She wanted more. The Tri-Wizard tournament would show Hogwarts for the farce it had become, while at the same time raising her own profile to a point where she couldn't be ignored. Coming straight after the Quidditch World Cup, the name Dolores Umbridge would then be on everyone's lips. She'd see to that. The biggest surprise for Dolores was finding such an ally at Drumstrang. She would certainly be secretly rooting for their champion to win the tournament. That way she could be assured they would be a pure blood. That so many pure bloods were literally forced out the ministry sickened Dolores, especially since she never got a promotion out of all the sudden and unexpected vacancies. She knew one day Dolores Umbridge would be back on top, and then it would be time to pay back all those who had wronged her. The scar on the back of her hand was all the reminder she needed of who sat on the very top of that list. They were sorting through the list in Augusta's office. Unlike last year, the selection committee had no reason to exclude the person who ran Hogwarts from the meeting. So we're agreed? Pauline Knott and Natalie MacDonald will be the Potter Scholarship students for next year. Sirius and Amelia both nodded their agreement to Minerva. Natalie was a muggle born while Pauline was a pure blood. Apart from one of them not being a wizard, they really couldn't have picked 2 more balanced or deserving cases. Having watched the success of the inaugural Potter scholarships, this year's were allocated more along the lines of which students would benefit most from joining this rather exclusive family and gaining that personal as well as financial support. Natalie's parents were somewhat older than was considered the norm to have a first child, her mother being in her mid-40s before conceiving their miracle baby. With her father going to be 60 on his next birthday, the couple were understandably very protective of their only child. Discovering that Potter's support system would be in place for Natalie might be the only reason the McDonalds would allow their daughter to attend Hogwarts, and might also be the only reason they could afford it. For Pauline Knott, this scholarship would completely remove any taint that lingered from her father's deeds. That was worth more than gold to the remaining Knott family. Now that all three were happy with their decision, Augusta revealed the real reason she was so keen to have this meeting in her office. I finally decided that Muggle studies simply can't continue being taught the way it is. Just by spending time with Dan and Emma, I can tell the entire course is a load of tosh. It hasn't been updated in at least 50 years, and leaves Hogwarts looking stupid to anyone with even a modicum of Muggle background. This is simply unacceptable to me. She was finding no disagreements from her audience, though all three wondered where Augusta was going with this. I have checked abroad and discovered that each country sets its own Muggle studies curriculum. Apparently Muggles aren't the same the world over, and there are tremendous differences in these curriculums. This leaves us with a massive problem, more than one actually. If we were to bring a Muggle into the castle to teach the course, we are all aware that they would either be ignored or simply disbelieved by the very people who would benefit most from this course. What we need is someone of impeachable breeding, yet with enough understanding of Muggles and their world to pass on that knowledge to our students. Now, if this person then had a wife who was already a professor here, Sirius couldn't contain his laughter, thinking he'd just been pranked by a master. It was only as his laughter wound down that he realized everyone else in the room was taking this suggestion seriously. I think that's a wonderful idea, Augusta. Susan raves about the difference Henrika's made to the history course. With her and Remus in the castle, Sirius would have plenty of support on the best methods to get his points across. His former head of house agreed with Amelia. Having Lord Black teaching Muggle studies would certainly remove the stigma that's attached to the subject by the pure-blood children, and we all know Sirius has more experience of that world than any of us. Before Sirius could raise any objections, Augusta revealed this was certainly something she'd put a lot of thought into. Emma and Dan have been looking over the former course and its objectives. After they stopped laughing, both started forming new ones for us. They've also had the advantage of having Harry, Padma, and my Neville staying in their home, giving them a fair idea just how clueless we are in relation to their world. They would be delighted to work with you on this and are certainly a resource you should use. Both you and Henrika, being Hogwarts professors, would see you living and working together in the castle, and also allow you to see Harry and Hermione every day. Augusta handed him some printed sheets with the Granger's proposed course objectives. Sirius surprised himself by understanding all of it. When he then started thinking about the best way that could be taught to the students, Sirius knew what his answer would be. Her last point too really resonated with the Marauder. Sirius was being offered an opportunity to spend every day with those he loved and perhaps begin the journey to make the Black name stand for something good and worthwhile. He had no intention of making it easy for them, though. There was always budgets to consider, and the longer he held out, the more course materials he would be able to wring from Augusta and Minerva. As the conversation progressed, Augusta's apprehension began to dissipate. She was sure she had her new professor of Muggle studies. As the conversation with Whitefang progressed, Barchoke's apprehension just grew and grew. I can't really put my finger on it, but I just know they're up to something. One day that spoiled whelp, Dragonbreath, was walking around as if a dragon had chewed his nuts off. Next you'd have thought he just inherited a mountain of gold. He's more focused on his training too. That's totally against everything the arse has done before. Barchoke knew Bloodfang was far too wily an operator to give anything away. His son, though, was a whole different matter. The animosity between Dragontooth and Harry had been present right from their first meeting, with Harry coming off second best in the early exchanges. It was only after Harry started to dominate their clashes that the real trouble started. Always said you killed the wrong brother. Bloodfang is the real brains of that family, which is why it was him who issued the challenge. His son, though, takes after his stupid and impulsive dead uncle without inheriting his uncle's skill with a blade. Without his father's gold and influence behind him, little Dragon Breath would be using his fancy blades to peel vegetables. Making soup is about all the gobshite is good for. Do you mean as a cook or as an ingredient? White Fang's laughter rang out at that before the old goblin became serious again. Those two are bad to the bone and would ruin any cauldron of soup. Trouble is coming though, just make sure it doesn't catch you unawares. I can see you or Harry having to kill them both. That would be a day to sell tickets for the pit. We'll take precautions, my friend, and here's a little something for your troubles. A bag of gold coins left Barchoke's hand and disappeared into the old goblin's tunic. I know you'll listen out for any more information on this. I would certainly appreciate hearing it. Both parties understood that appreciation would come in the form of a bag that jingled. But White Fang surprised the ambassador by stopping at the door. That's a son to be proud of, you've got there. You and him are doing wonderful things for the nation, so you don't even need to ask. Besides, I hate that bastard Bloodfang's guts. As he left, Barchoke then focused on the immediate problem, locating the threat. Harry was safe in Hogwarts for another few weeks, but there were two people currently in their medical facility that would be a juicy target for those barbarians. He would arrange a guard and speak to the healers about the possibility of moving them. Emma had turned Kinkasi into a fine home for their children, so perhaps that could be a possibility. He would need to contact Augusta for her opinion. Augusta was currently speaking to the second years just before their history class ended. We are going to try something this year that hasn't been done before. Since I know some of you will be struggling with which electives to choose, I had hoped to arrange an evening where the professors could put on a bit of a display to promote their subject, and perhaps help you reach your decisions. As she'd expected, this was met with a wave of enthusiasm, though Augusta was surprised to see Harry's hand immediately go up to ask a question. Is this a voluntary event, Madam Longbottom? I hadn't intended to make attendance compulsory, Centurion. I was hoping you could configure the room of requirements so we could hold it there. This received a shake of the head from Harry. Sorry, madam, I have already chosen my electives and will not be attending. Having kept the fact that Sirius was going to be the new Muggle Studies professor a secret, this was going to be their big reveal. She was really keen for Harry to be there. His non-attendance would certainly put a damper on the evening and probably encourage others not to go. You really should attend, Centurion. I guarantee there will be a surprise or two, and I don't want to be forced to make it compulsory. This didn't sit well with Harry. Should you make this event compulsory, I still wouldn't attend and certainly contest any punishment handed out because of that. Hermione could tell from the way Harry was sitting that this couldn't end well. Augusta too wasn't used to being told no. Hermione just didn't understand what Harry's problem was here. Neither could Augusta, nor could she let a student challenge her authority, even if it was a student she knew well. I'll give you a moment to explain that answer, Centurion Crow. Then you and I will be heading for my office. Harry never backed down an inch. When you say these professors are putting on a bit of a display of their subjects, Madam Longbottom, what exactly do you mean? Does the care of magical creatures professor perhaps have my father there to tell us how we should look after him? Feed and water twice a day while keeping his cage clean. What about Professor Lupin or Professor Hobson? Will they be modeling for the creatures professor? Perhaps a house elf, centaur, a person in a tank even. You will perhaps understand why the very mention of that subject disgusts me, and since Hermione is far better at teaching me about muggles than anyone you could possibly find, I will not be attending this display evening. As I said, I have chosen my electives. The bell for end of class rang throughout the stunned room, allowing Harry to pack his stuff and leave without another word being spoken. He didn't get far, though, before his arm was grabbed and he had a face full of an exceedingly angry Neville. Who the hell do you think you are, talking to my gran like that? You crossed the line, Crow. I was not aware I insulted your grandmother. It was certainly not my intention. She asked me for something. I said no. She asked for my reasons. I gave them. I don't give a shit about that. It was the disrespect in your entire manner that I'm talking about. You just trod all over her as if she meant nothing. She means bloody everything to me. I wasn't talking to your gran. I was talking to the Hogwarts High Inquisitor. Yeah, and wasn't trying to kill your father, just the Goblin Ambassador. Would that have made you feel any better if they'd succeeded? At that, both girls interceded, physically pushing themselves between the two and forcing them further apart. Hermione managed to get a shocked Harry turned and heading in the direction of a certain alcove she knew of. They were bigger this year, but she solved the problem by plonking Harry down and sitting on his lap. At this moment in time, the only thing Hermione was certain of was their talk this year wouldn't be interrupted by their two best friends bringing them some dinner. Harry, you are mine, and I am yours. Why are you saying that now? I just want you to understand that no matter what we say here, that's not going to change. People argue, Harry, it's not the end of the world. We need to talk about this and be totally honest with each other. You are mine and I am so bloody lucky. That Harry ended his proclamation with a light kiss to her lips was Hermione's first indicator that things might not be as bad as she thought they were. First, I agree with everything you said in there about the ministry class as creatures. This drew a smile from Harry, but Hermione was far from finished. Can I ask you if you think Augusta or Neville agree with your opinion too? I thought they did. Of course they do, Harry. We've both seen Augusta sitting chatting to Father late into the night. They certainly consider each other as friends. We both know Remus and Henrika fit squarely into that category too, for all members of the extended family. Stopping and taking a calming breath, Hermione then continued with trying to explain exactly what he'd done. I know the creature situation disgusts you, and I share that disgust, but you just dealt with Augusta as if she was Dumbledore. You stomped all over her. She already shares your views but had probably never thought of the situation from that angle before. All you needed to do was gently point that out to her. And that's why Neville was mad. Neville was way beyond mad. Harry, he was bloody livid. Anyone else would have received a punch in the mouth before they could leave the class. I never intended any insult to his gran and clearly said so. Why did he then need to bring Father almost being assassinated into it? That was just his temper talking. We both know how he feels about Father, yet he doesn't know how I feel about his gran. Hermione left that for a moment before asking the question that was the crux of the matter. Are you prepared to apologize to Neville even though you think you did nothing wrong? Is their friendship not worth that? We both know Padma's involved in this as much as I am. A goblin should always do the honorable thing, Hermione. He paused and Hermione could see there was more to be said. She sat quietly on his knee and waited on her mate putting his thoughts into words. I'm frightened. I'm beginning to forget just who I am, Hermione. There's a war going on inside me that's every bit as crucial as the one outside Hogwarts. I'm going to have to make decisions here and now that will affect us in the years to come. Now that she'd got him started speaking about this, Hermione had no intention of letting him stop. She did have to correct his misconception, though. We're going to have to make decisions, Harry. Now spill it. They were still sitting there chatting when Penny and Percy found them hours later. There's only 15 minutes to curfew. Are you two okay? Percy sent Neville to bed and I made sure Padma got to her dorm. When I didn't find either of you there, we came looking. This saw a groan coming from Harry. Does the entire castle know what happened? It was actually Hermione who provided the answer. Harry, our entire year group watched it happen. You two weren't exactly quiet. You know how this place works. It would have been all over Hogwarts within minutes. This had the agreement of the Gryffindor prefect, though Percy had noted an anomaly he thought was worth mentioning. Normally people's responses go along house lines. Not this time, though. I think everyone is so shocked that you and Neville were actually fighting. We weren't fighting, Percy. We just had a disagreement. The prefect in Percy didn't seem impressed with that. You weren't fighting because your girlfriends got between you, and that's the only reason you're not in trouble. That will change if you don't both head to your dorm right now. Deciding that was a good idea, Harry and Hermione headed off to Ravenclaw Tower hand in hand. Augustus cradled his precious stone disc in his hand, allowing the blood seeping from his damaged fingers to coat his ticket out of Azkaban. Rookwood was delighted with how things were going. He was actually ahead of the schedule he set himself, and that was before he redesigned the runes to protect two people. The delicate work he was doing for this stage meant that he had to carve during the day. There was no way to work by sense of touch now. While this was risky, it also held the advantage of allowing him to lie here and dream of what this treasure he held in his hand could possibly bring to him. The Death Eater had been putting everything he'd heard spoken about in the wing together to formulate a plan, and not just those relatively recent comments either. Even with this protective disc and a straw wand, Rookwood understood the odds of him escaping the prison, getting off the island and reaching the mainland were still heavily stacked against him. Knowing that fact, Rookwood was willing to attempt something so audacious that he might find himself dead before he set foot outside the high-security wing. If it worked, though, Augustus could find himself achieving everything he'd ever wanted. That he would have Potter to thank for this was something Rookwood hoped he got the chance to do, thank the little shit personally and painfully. With all these pleasant thoughts running through his mind, Augustus Rookwood was certainly the only person in the high-security wing who was smiling. It was hard to believe Harry and Hermione were smiling as their swords flashed and clanged at speed. Sirius certainly struggled to believe what he was seeing this morning. He at least had the sense not to disrupt their concentration and waited for a break to announce his presence. "Merlin, when did you two get so quick?" "Sirius, what brings you to Hogwarts on a Thursday morning? Is everything all right?" "Harry, I was just going to ask you that. I got a flu call from Henrika to say that you and Neville had a big fight and that I should get my ass to Hogwarts. Then I find you two fencing like a couple of maniacs in the courtyard. What's going on?" "Oh, this is so getting old. We never had a fight. Padma and Hermione were there. Do you think they would let us do something stupid like that? We had an argument over the way I spoke to Augusta. I intend to sort it at breakfast." That news took away most of the worries Sirius had. "Glad to hear it. Now what's this I hear you're not taking the subject? Your godfather is going to be teaching. You are both looking at Hogwarts' new Muggle Studies professor." After receiving their genuine and heartfelt congratulations, Sirius, though he had the entire situation under control. "So can I assume I'll see you both in my class?" The serious expression that came over both of them warned Sirius there was more going on here than he thought. "I'm sorry, Sirius. My answer is still no. I'm also intending to drop a few subjects next year, too. I feel I'm losing my way in Hogwarts and treating my time in the castle as a bit of a holiday. That attack on Father shows the Death Eaters haven't gone away and Voldemort is still out there, too. I need to train more to meet that threat. And sitting in Muggle Studies with you isn't going to do that for me. Hermione and I intend to set our own timetable to prepare for this threat. We can't really live our lives in peace until this threat is dealt with." Turning his attention to Hermione, Sirius asked if she agreed with this new regime Harry wanted to instigate. Harry actually wanted to deal with the entire situation by himself. "We were up most of the night while I convinced him that simply was not an option. An invisibility cloak can certainly come in handy. Compromises were made, and now both of us are getting what we want out of this, Professor Weasley thinks. Our magic is reaching the point where we can start to learn some of the more destructive curses. We intend to do that come September, but not just at the weekend anymore. We're only taking 2 electives while dropping herbology and astronomy. Since Harry has no intention of sitting his OWLs anyway, there really is no point in continuing with these subjects. They won't help us fight who we need to." This puzzled Sirius, as he knew how seriously these two took their education. They weren't placed in Ravenclaw by accident. "If you don't sit your OWLs, what are you going to do about any UTs?" "We don't intend to sit them. We actually don't intend to be here past 5th year now." Harry's glib answer had Sirius once more turning his attention to Hermione. "And you're okay with this? What will you do?" This was met with a wide smile that confused the hell out of Sirius until Hermione explained the reasoning behind it. "My brilliant bonded mate pointed out something to me that he'd sneakily researched. The Muggle legal age to get married in Scotland is 16. Do you know we actually live in Scotland now? I plan to marry the Baron of Kingersea the summer he turns 16. Any further planning past that will depend on the situation with Voldemort and his Death Eaters." A horrible thought just struck Sirius. "Oh shit. I guess I get to be the one that passes this piece of news on to Dan and Emma. That these two planned to marry a year earlier wouldn't create too many waves, especially since it was legal to do so. What would spawn the hurricane, though, was the thought of their son and daughter training to fight Death Eaters and Voldemort. As the implications of this sank into Sirius, Harry's arm slipped around Hermione. Told you he was the best godfather in the world. The best godfather in the world had kept them late, delving deeper into their plans, so everyone was already sitting at breakfast when they arrived in the Great Hall. Padma was unsurprisingly at the Gryffindor table, keeping company with Neville and Parvati. The atmosphere was so thick with apprehension and expectation that you could have cut it with a knife. All eyes were on the couple as Harry escorted Hermione to a seat beside Luna before heading alone to the staff table. Madam Longbottom, if I offended you in any way yesterday, I offer an unreserved apology. My intention was merely to inform, never to insult. Harry then shifted his attention and offered a respectful bow. Professor Kettleburn, I meant no slight on you or your abilities as a professor either. You merely teach the course that is dictated to you. That I have issues with the material you are obliged to teach should not reflect negatively on you, your subject, nor Hogwarts. Harry received a nod of acceptance from the professor before Augusta stood. For myself, no apology is necessary, Centurion. I am well aware no insult was intended. Instead, I would like to offer an apology of my own. You are attending Hogwarts as a goblin, something that was forgotten yesterday, and your reaction could and should have been anticipated. With a rueful smile, Harry answered Augusta. No apology needed, madam. Forgetting I'm a goblin is an easy mistake to make. He didn't add it was one he almost made himself. That would be discussed when only family were present. Harry returned to sit beside Hermione and Luna while everyone around them ignored the elephant in the room, the confrontation that was still to come. They were making their way to herbology when Neville approached. Harry, Don't worry about it, Neville. I hear the word creature and the red mist descends. I shouldn't have. You didn't do anything, Harry. It was. Padma had seen and heard enough. She was delighted these two were able to get over this. Both had a stubborn streak a mile wide, and, as she'd suspected and hoped, Hermione had clearly been working on her mate as much as she'd been doing with Neville. Okay, you two, enough. Do you intend to keep that up all day? Pack it in and let's not keep Professor Sprout waiting. Hermione, did you guys miss dinner last night? Oh, Hogwarts looks after her champion. We had something brought up to us in Harry's room. We spent half the night talking and we'll need to tell you about it. It's the half of the night you spent when you weren't talking. I want to hear about. Now, Padma, that would really be telling. Parvati kept her voice low so only her sister could hear. Did she just say they spent the night together? Padma just couldn't resist teasing her sister. The fact that it was true just made it all the sweeter. It wouldn't be the first time, Pava, for even the second. Even though it wasn't her money she was spending, Emma had balked at the prices being charged for quality period furniture, especially with the amount that would be needed to fill the house in Kingassy. That all changed when she made a startling discovery. She could buy pieces that were badly in need of repair for a fraction of the cost, and the elves would soon have them looking as good as the day they were made. She and Dan had then spent some wonderful weekends roaming through flea markets and antique fairs with a hired van in their search for broken and worn furniture. The sellers were always happy to manhandle whatever junk they bought into the van, thinking they had found a right couple of mugs here. The elves would then take each piece directly from the van to Kingassy, and those same sellers would have been kicking themselves if they ever laid eyes on the finished piece again. The Patils, Longbottoms, Grangers, Sirius, Barchoke and Amelia were currently occupying sofas and winged-back chairs that had been bought in this manner. The elves had even recovered them all in the same antique fabric, so the entire collection matched. The room may have been decorated to offer an air of tranquility and peacefulness, but that design was about to undergo a severe test. Augusta got the ball rolling. We all know why we're here. We have 4 of our children wanting to tailor their Hogwarts curriculum to that of a more defense-orientated nature. This had Alice asking a question she really needed to know the answer to. Is this because Frank and I had to leave Gryffindor? We don't want them altering their schooling because of us. That can't be the case, Alice. They don't even know about you living here. We wanted to keep that as a surprise for when they come home at summer. Barchoke glanced around the room to see if anyone else had let something slip. There were no takers. It was time to perform his godfatherly duties and support the couples. I spoke to Harry and Hermione at length about this. Those two really have put a lot of thought into their plans for the future. Harry originally plotted this course solely for himself. Hermione, as you might imagine, was having none of that. I certainly wasn't surprised when Neville and Padma signed up for this too. Those four watch each other's backs and neither couple would want to be left behind. Dan interrupted Sirius before he could say any more. I thought Hermione was attending Hogwarts to receive an education, not training for combat so she can fight a war. I also distinctly remember being told that goblin females can never become warriors or fight in battles. Why are Hermione and Padma different? I give everyone in this room my personal guarantee that, should it come to a pitched battle, neither of those girls will be anywhere near it. Barchoke spoke with such authority that they all looked to him hoping he would explain his statement. If it comes to a battle, every blade Gringotts can muster will stand beside all the wands Amelia has available, and we will slaughter our enemies. The problem is, though, that the Death Eaters know this. They won't fight a pitched battle with the outcome a foregone conclusion. They will pick what they consider weak targets before attacking from ambush, and that is why our children train. They need the skills to escape from any attack or hold their attackers at bay until help arrives. The gathered family found Amelia agreeing with every word. Barchoke just said, "Most Death Eaters are cowards, hiding behind masks and attacking in packs. They almost won the last time because people stood back and let them literally get away with murder. That won't happen again. I'm pretty sure these four have no intention of going looking for trouble. They just want the ability to deal with any that comes their way." The head of the DMLA aimed her next comment specifically at the parents of the girls. "Dealing with Death Eaters is the job of my department, not your daughters or sons. We simply can't ignore, though, that forces out with the control of anyone in this room have made those same four students targets for these animals. We will do our very best to keep them free from harm, but we need to be honest here and say we can't protect them for every minute of every day. I see this as nothing more than them training to cope with any situations that slip past all our protections." The ambassador and the aura had turned the situation on its head, but Dan still wasn't convinced about their children dropping subjects and then leaving Hogwarts at 16. What about their education? How will this affect them in later life? Dan, you and Emma aren't looking at the whole picture here. Our daughter will leave Hogwarts with 7 Olbewins, and I'm willing to bet anyone in this room she will score outstandings for all of them. No one was prepared to bet against the Goblin at the best of times, and certainly not on the quality of Hermione's grades. All three will also certainly be capable of passing their NIOTs in potions and defense, throwing their orders of Merlin, first class, and any doors they want will be open to them. They're finishing Hogwarts, but that doesn't mean they will be finishing their education. There would be a long line of tutors queuing to teach those four any subject they wanted. Again, Amelia added her backing to the Goblin ambassador. Those potential results alone would see Hermione qualify for most jobs in the Ministry. An Order of Merlin and being married to Harry would tick any boxes her qualifications missed. I think they're actually being fairly sensible about this, getting a wide educational base while training to protect themselves. I also think the news that they'll be leaving Hogwarts after OWLC shouldn't pass outside the family. We're not even sure yet if that part will include Neville and Padma. Sirius then attempted to play mediator. The way Harry and Hermione were speaking about this, ending their education, was certainly not on the cards. I heard Hermione mention to Harry that there are university courses in diplomacy, something he seemed really interested in. If that's the case, then we'll be relying on the only two people we know who've actually attended university to steer the family in the right direction. This left Dan gobsmacked, while Emma wanted to make sure there was no magical muggle misunderstanding going on here. Is that even possible? Transferring from one system into another? It was a now smiling Amelia who fielded that question. It's not well publicized, but the occasional Muggle-born student will transfer back into the system they left at 11. The Ministry can issue Muggle Education Award certificates to match their achievements after sitting our exams. It's really then up to the individual to study the Muggle material they are sure to have missed while at Hogwarts. She had been worried how they would deal with the backlash that was certain to come if Harry left Hogwarts after 5th year. Here, though, was a scenario that would negate that problem nicely. I have to say, Harry leaving Hogwarts in order to study for the position of ambassador will not raise any eyebrows in our community. That type of education is not really available anywhere, except as a junior in the Department of International Magical Cooperation, something I can't see Harry accepting. This drew a laugh from Barchoke. A centurion working as an office junior in the ministry sounds like an exceedingly bad joke. Dan burst out laughing and couldn't stop for a minute or two. He needed to wipe his eyes and drink some tea to get himself back under control. Sorry, folks. I just needed to let that come out. I was suddenly worried about Hermione's university fund, until I remembered I was citing in what is to all effects and purposes her house, and she received a fortune from the sale of that basilisk. The whole situation just freaked me out for a moment there. If you'll excuse me, I need to go and shoot something to calm down. A kiss for his wife, and Dan left the room with everyone now staring at him. A cry of pull was soon followed by a pair of shotgun blasts. Dan was immensely pleased to see he had again hit both discs that sailed out from the bushes. This was such a wonderful setup, but he could never bring any of his friends from the gun club here. How would he explain his gun handler to them? Dobby was at his side, ready to take his shotgun and hand Dan its partner that was already loaded and ready to fire. Who would have believed that elves would love the sound a shotgun made? And all politely refused to wear ear defenders, claiming they were unnecessary. They were always more than willing to operate the clay pigeon thrower, but Dobby had gained prestige amongst his fellow elves from being the only elf trained to handle and load the shotguns. Pow, blast, blast. It was such an easy rhythm to slip into that Dobby had to inform his master. They had an audience before handing over the loaded shotgun. Instead of snapping it shut, Dan removed the cartridges before turning to see who his guests were. It turned out Emma was having great difficulty explaining what clay pigeon shooting was to a room full of purebloods and simply brought them all out to see for themselves. Barchoke had heard the explanation from Dan before, but it in no way did justice to what was happening here. He was desperate to discover what one of those weapons would do to an enemy, yet wouldn't ask that question. While there were ladies present, he would get his answer from Dan later. Dan was secretly pleased. He'd clearly impressed his audience with his skill. He was also glad to be unaware there were people watching him while he was actually shooting. That looks fantastic. You have got to let me have a go at that. Amelia couldn't let that pass unchallenged. Sirius Black with a gun in his hands, time to run for cover. Oh, there are strict safety protocols that need to be learned before anyone gets their hands on a shotgun. Pranks and tomfoolery aren't allowed anywhere near a shooting site. I'm hoping we can fit some time in over the summer where I can teach our crew the basics. Smitter was flabbergasted at what Dan was suggesting, though for another reason than magicals using guns. Can witches learn this as well? Absolutely. Emma has tried shooting a few times. I would be delighted to teach anyone who wants to learn the basics and get you started. Could a goblin learn this? Barchoke's request had Dan smiling. You mean a goblin who isn't Harry? I don't see why not. There should be a model of shotgun we can adapt to suit your trigger finger being longer. This had Amelia joking with the goblin. Should the ministry be worried that Gringotts will soon be issuing their warriors with these weapons? I think the minister would lose some sleep if that were the case. I see a sport here requiring skill, accuracy and timing, where magical, muggle and goblin, be they male or female, can compete equally. I know my son. He will love this and I want to be able to shoot with him. Master Dan, Dobby will order more cartridges. The little guy couldn't hide his excitement at the thought of even more shooting. Won't you need more of those discs too, or do you think we're all going to miss? No sir, Lord Black. Elves copy them and is now making discs from rocks. We have many rocks here. Dobby thinks it will be lots of years before we need to buy more discs. The little elf picked up a rock and soon had it transfigured into an orange disc. Another elf then popped beside him and took the disc to the pile they had stored beside the thrower. Dan may not be able to bring any of his club here, but it was now looking like he was going to have a club of his own. Being outside and shooting had also given him an opportunity to clear his thoughts about their children. There was no question that Harry would never place Hermione in danger unless lives were literally at stake. allowing Dan to look on their extra training as self-defense lessons. The prospect of them one day attending university pleased him more than he could express. Here was concrete proof they weren't losing their daughter to a world that contained so many wondrous things. Hermione was sitting on the Hogwarts Express and wondering if their previous year at school could have gotten any stranger. Draco and Pansy leaving their compartment and saying they would see them at the wedding was just one of the changes her mind was having to deal with. Theo not dropping by to thank Harry for making his sister a Potter scholarship student was another. Then there was Blaise, sitting with his arm around Parvati. He had used Harry's example from last year and asked her to be his girlfriend at the twins' birthday party. Parvati had of course said yes. Crow's Marauders had been ecstatic upon learning the club would continue next year, and a constant stream of them had popped their heads into their compartment to wish the group a happy holiday. McGonagall may have given them all her patented "your house is your family" spiel last September, but the Marauders looked on their club members more as their Hogwarts family. Whatever house they were in was immaterial. It showed when Gryffindor won the Quidditch Cup and Ravenclaw the House Cup. Cheering came from all four tables. Fred and George also stopped by to ensure for at least the 100th time that they were indeed invited to Egypt, and no, it wasn't a prank. They would actually be in Egypt when the results of their potions OKWLs arrived, but neither seemed too worried about that. The four boys were all delighted at the thought of running their own Marauders Club with the new first years. They also had a copy of all Hermione's lesson plans and notes from this year's club to work with. All that remained to be done was to sit down at the start of the new term and study timetables to see what night suited which club best. They also had to sit down with their parents and sell the idea of their change of curriculum, and leaving Hogwarts early, all four were relieved that Sirius had done the groundwork for them first. Harry, discovering that he could study history and politics at university, completely sold him on the idea. She herself was leaning more towards law, with their two best friends deciding to keep all their options open. Both couples completely agreed with the suggestion. Sirius returned to Hogwarts with that they tell no one outside the family of their plans at the moment. This would certainly affect the layout of their library in Kingassee though, with a lot of space now being required for Muggle books too. Their summer plans were also having an effect on the train. There were 11 students outside the family traveling to Florida with them, Lavender spending the week in France and another 6 joining the group in Egypt. The excitement was palpable as the express sped to London. They would be seeing a lot of their friends over the summer, but at the moment, everyone just wanted to get home. Wormtail was also traveling on a train, but not in a comfortable compartment. The rat was hiding under a freight container as Central Europe sped past. While somewhat cramped and drafty, it certainly beat walking a few hundred miles. When the train stopped, he would crawl out and transform back to Peter before checking his master's wand for direction. So far, the train was progressing in roughly the direction he needed to go. Since it was now looking like he would have to cross the Alps, his directions of travel would be determined mostly by the terrain anyway. A train going in roughly the direction he needed to was far preferable to attempting to traverse mountains on foot. Unlike the occupants of the Hogwarts Express, Peter wasn't expecting hugs and kisses when he reached his final destination. At the moment, Hermione wasn't able to hug anyone in greeting. At this very moment, Hermione was in floods of tears. She also had both her parents very worried by their daughter's reaction. "Don't you like it?" "We could not change a thing. Mum, I absolutely love it. You've done a wonderful job. You too, Dad. Nice to know I at least merited a mention. Deems, I'm in the Huff act didn't really work because of the large smile the dentist was now wearing." Harry came up behind Hermione before slipping his arms around his still stunned and tearful mate. "I don't remember you having this reaction to any of our other houses." She leaned back into him before answering. "This one is ours though, this one is home." Emma couldn't wait any longer and dragged both of them away to see the rest of the house. Dinner that night was a real family affair with only Amelia, Susan and Hannah missing. Both girls though would be joining them on Monday as they headed for Sweden. Neville was overjoyed to see his parents, and both looking so well. Not having laid eyes them since February, there was a marked improvement in their health. Since then, with both now feeling confident they would be able to make the island holiday with the rest of the family. Harry was a bit worried. His father hadn't told him about the suspected threat from inside Gringotts before now, though fully accepted the reason that he couldn't really do anything about it while at Hogwarts. He certainly didn't intend to have a repeat of what happened over care of magical creatures. Goblins spoke their minds, yet Harry was finding he still hadn't grasped all the social niceties required for not upsetting non-goblin people, something he had no intention of doing that day in history class either. Thanks to Hermione and Padma, he and Neville had quickly sorted the matter between them, and both were embarrassed at how swiftly that news of their tiff had raced through the castle. He would talk to his father alone later, and hopefully discover what was really going on that would make him take such cautionary action. On the Hogwarts upside, though, the electives evening went ahead without Harry's presence, and with only Ronald Weasley choosing to take the care of magical creatures class. This caused Harry further embarrassment over the amount of influence he clearly held amongst his fellow students. This was especially pertinent when Hermione confidently predicted that, since his views on the matter were now well known throughout the castle, not one of Crow's marauders would choose the subject when their turn came at the end of the next term. With only one student in 2 years electing to take care of magical creatures, the Ministry would either have to change the course syllabus, or Hogwarts would be forced to drop it. Since the school stopped offering divination for the new term, Harry didn't think Hogwarts could really afford to lose another elective subject. Talk, of course, kept returning to next weekend's wedding, with the bride and groom to be present. That was always going to be the case. Sirius and Hendrika were also spending the weekend in Kingersea before accompanying the gang to Sweden on Monday. Alice and Frank wanted their public return to magical society to be the awards ball, so were giving the wedding a reluctant miss. Neville and Padma were also going to miss the first week in Sweden too, wanting to spend the time with Frank and Alice before arriving in Luleå on Friday with most of the adults. Luna's thoughts were also on her family, or rather her dad. Monday was so close yet also seemed so far away to the young witch. She hadn't seen him since leaving for Hogwarts last September, but the tone of his letters had begun to become slightly upbeat, as she allowed more of her real feelings to seep into her letters to him. It had been hard writing about how wonderful her Christmas had been, but her father's reply clearly indicated that was exactly what he'd hoped to hear. After that, Luna couldn't stop writing, and Urgit was kept busy delivering letters between them both. She wouldn't really need to introduce her friends to her father. He would be able to recognize them purely by the amount Luna had written about each of them. Remus was also in a reflective mood, thinking it wasn't so long ago his only companionship was the flock of sheep he was shepherding. Now he was having dinner in this beautiful house with friends and people who considered him family for company. The reflective mood was induced by watching his best friend, a best friend he'd once thought guilty of betrayal. A decade in Azkaban had certainly changed Sirius, but in some ways for the better. He could imagine a pre-prison Sirius attracting the attention of a witch like Henrika, but doubted if he would have been able to hold on to her, far less propose marriage. This much more mature version, though, not only accomplished that, but appeared to be looking forward to everything that entailed, including one day becoming a father. This line of thought focused his mind back onto his own problem, though he was still no nearer a solution. Remus was neither stupid or naive. He could plainly see Tonks was interested in him. He just couldn't for the life of him work out why. She was young, beautiful, talented, now independently wealthy, and soon to be presented with their nation's top award for bravery. Why she seemed interested in a broken-down old werewolf who needed help to land his first real job since leaving Hogwarts was a mystery to him. Remus wasn't really interested in a casual relationship, especially since Sirius was her head of house. He didn't think there was a hope in hell of anything more, but would happily settle for having the beautiful young Aurora as a friend. He would just have to wait and see what the future brought. Tonks had made all the running so far, and Remus was prepared to wait and see where that running led to. Hermione was in shorts and sports bra, while Harry wore his tunic as they raced around their property. Both agreed that what they thought was beautiful in mid-February was simply breathtaking in late June. As they ran along the glen, she wanted to know if Harry had discussed the Gringotts situation with his father. His answer was a growl. That whole family are rotten to the core. That little shit dragon breath is their last hope for greatness, so much so that when I started getting the better of him at about age 6, my father had to enter the pit and fight a duel to protect me. Sometimes I wish I hadn't dropped my sword that day he tried to hurt you. Surely you don't mean that, Harry? They ran for a minute or so before Harry answered his mate. The changes inside Gringotts are every bit as dramatic as those in the magical community, with reactions about the same too. Some have welcomed those changes with open arms. Most will sit back and wait to see what happens before committing themselves. But a few will plot to reverse these changes, and hopefully leave themselves in charge when the current system collapses. Dragon Breath and his family fall firmly into the last category. It took another moment for Hermione to reply. We've seen the changes in Hogwarts, changes I never thought would be possible 2 years ago. Couldn't Dragonbreath, or whatever his name is, change too? The little shit's name is Dragontooth. I call him that because I know it annoys him and know he won't change. People like Draco changed because it was to their advantage. Both of us would change whatever we needed to in order to stay together. Fudge has played his hand brilliantly and shot up in the estimation of the nation. Persecuting the Death Eaters without damaging their family's name, standing wealth, or other members probably avoided another war. Dragontooth's family would rather see the nation fighting wizards than living amongst them, something that attacking Frank and Alice inside Gringotts would probably accomplish. Hermione could sense Harry wasn't telling her everything and wasn't about to stand for that. Spill it, Crow. You know you can't keep secrets from me. It scares me sometimes how well you know me. And never mind trying to change the subject. Okay, it's father. That shoulder injury healed about as well as could be expected, and doesn't really bother him day to day. It does bother him with a blade in his hand. He's lost about 10% mobility in his sword arm. Not enough to trouble him unless he was fighting for his life in the pit. That 10% could see him killed, so I'm declaring myself family champion. Anyone attempting to challenge father in the pit will instead find themselves facing me. Hermione stopped running and Harry was expecting some harsh words. Instead, she leaned in and tenderly kissed him. Like you said, Harry, I know you so well, certainly well enough to know you could never have reached any other decision. You nearly killed yourself attacking that basilisk to protect me, of course. You're going to protect your father any way you can. Do you think it will come to that? Whitefang provided the initial warning, but things have quietened since father moved Frank and Alice to Kingersea. The truth is we just don't know, and that's what has us worried. With no more needing said, they continued their run. Kingersea was almost 500 miles from Gringotts and their time was occupied for the next month at least, most of which would see father accompanying them. For a goblin to move directly against Barchoke inside Gringotts would be suicidal, both politically and literally, since the director had reintroduced father's guards. While taking precautions, they couldn't let this implied threat rule their lives. They would deal with any problems if and when they arose. Living what was considered normally for them would see the extended family attempting clay pigeon shooting today, something all the adults seemed excited about. Excited didn't even begin to describe Luna as they prepared to head for Sweden. The group had barely recovered from the Portkey arrival when she screamed, "Dad!" at the top of her voice, while springing at the man who was clearly her father. Zeno Lovegood appeared gaunt, almost frail, with his long blonde hair hanging down past the shoulders of the startling scarlet and lime green striped robes he was wearing. Then again, most people would appear gaunt when standing next to Lucas Hobson. Henrika was quickly emulating Luna by being wrapped in her parents' arms, while Sirius and Remus got the rest of their group organized and pointed in the direction of where they would be staying. He'd rented 6 houses for a fortnight, though most wouldn't be needed until Friday. Moa and Lucas were soon dispensing hugs to everyone and welcoming them to Lula, while promising the youngsters they would enjoy their stay. Moa needed to discuss the wedding arrangements with Henrika and Sirius, so Lucas took everyone else for a look around town. Remus went along too, and it would be a while before either Lovegood would be parted from each other. After spending the afternoon together, all those visiting could see why Zeno could be considered a little strange or even a touch eccentric. He appeared to have a completely different way of looking at the world around them. Being Luna's father, though, gained him instant acceptance within the family group. It was blindingly obvious both father and daughter doted on each other. They were all very fond of Luna, and her father did tell some wonderful and certainly colorful stories. Whether there was any truth in those stories was not for them to judge. Sirius decided this was the best thing he'd ever done as he stood with Remus by his side, awaiting the arrival of his bride-to-be. When Henrika appeared, every male in the little church agreed wholeheartedly with Sirius Black. Any bride who's walking down the aisle can be certain every pair of eyes in the building are focused on her. Henrika Hobson, soon to be Black, took that experience to a whole new level. She had promised her groom he would like her dress, and Henrika hadn't exaggerated. Sirius couldn't take his eyes off his bride. The dress was white, but that was Henrika's only flirt with wedding tradition. This was no sweeping gown, but rather a dress that scalloped and heavily embroidered hem stopped above her knee, with a scooped front, low back that was covered by her cascading blonde hair and three-quarter lace sleeves. Henrika had taken the concept of the little black dress and adapted it for her wedding. The Black family tiara was the only jewelry she wore. Henrika simply didn't need any more. Everyone agreed the adaptation was a resounding success, especially her bridesmaid. Tonks wore a similar style dress, except for the color. It was a deep shade of violet that the Aura had changed her hair to match. She had no worries about outshining the bride. That was simply never going to happen, but Tonks could only hope the best man noticed her. Sirius couldn't remember a word of the wedding ceremony. Only Remus putting the rings in his hand alerted him he had some work to do. When the minister uttered the line, "You may now kiss the bride," Sirius needed no prompting. With the cheers of their family and friends ringing in their ears, Sirius shared their first kiss as a married couple with his wife. It wasn't until their first dance Tonks received confirmation that Remus had indeed noticed her. "You really are quite beautiful. Is this the real you?" "More or less. My natural hair is black and my original nose slightly longer. This is my own body, though. I'm glad you seem to like it. This same body requires a date for the awards ball. How would you feel about helping a lady out?" She waited nervously on his answer, watching the conflict play behind his eyes and hoping Remus would reach the decision she wanted. "I've already been invited to attend by Sirius. Somehow, though, I get the impression your invitation is slightly different. What do you think the reaction would be if a beautiful young Aurora turned up to collect her Order of Merlin, first class with a werewolf on her arm? Sending out a message like that could see you lose your job." "My job prohibits me from associating with known criminals. Am I going to have to arrest you anytime soon?" "I think I would only be in trouble if you could read my mind. I'm not quite sure if everything I'm currently thinking about you is strictly legal. I have to ask, though, why me?" "Remus, you're a smart, decent guy who can always make me smile. Have you any idea how scarce guys like you are? I'm not talking about your furry little problem, just as you're not interested in who I can change into. We both know those traits are part of who we are, but neither of us let that define who we are. I am just as interested in the real you as you seem to be in the real me." "Well, if the real Tonks requires a date for the ball arranged in her honor, Professor Lupin would be only too happy to oblige the beautiful young lady and accompany her to that special evening." Remus was delighted to see he'd made her smile again. When he looked into those gorgeous eyes, he thought that making Tonks smile was certainly a job he would be a bloody fool not to apply for. Ooh. The missing marauder was currently about 2,500 miles from his former friends. The eyes he was staring into, though, were 1,000,000 miles away from those currently being enjoyed by Remus and Sirius. For a start, this pair were glowing red and staring at him from the eyes of a humongous snake. His mind was also wandering too, but it wasn't wandering alone. He felt his master's presence as his journey to Albania played back for the Dark Lord to view. Peter could feel his master's anger growing with each new revelation, but seeing the Malfoy trial in the Prophet ended the communication between master and servant. It ended because Peter lost conscience. The only way Peter could describe the agony was to say that it felt as if the Dark Lord just stuck his wand into his victim's ear before then casting his most powerful Cruciatus curse. Peter had never felt pain like that in his life before, and would be exceedingly happy never to have a repeat performance. His body was still trembling as he slowly regained his senses that were telling him there was a massive snake just waiting to have him for supper. It was almost as if he was feeling his master's voice inside his head. Peter certainly couldn't understand what the reptile was hissing at him. "RobSt, Wormtail, we have much to do. There are certain people that need to be rewarded, while others have outlived their wrathfulness, face something I intend to remedy at the earliest opportunity. You are now on the reward list. Fail me again, and you can join the other. There's a feast on that list are already dead. They just don't know it yet." Maniacal laughter now filled his head. Peter just wasn't sure if any of it was coming from him or whether it was all Lord Voldemort. Draco was lying in a strange bed, struggling with himself not to break into maniacal laughter at the day he'd just had. He was worried that if he started, it would be impossible to stop, thinking that talking to his roommate might help. Draco gave it a try. "Blaze, are you still awake?" "No, Draco, fell right off to sleep the moment my head hit the pillow. My brain feels as if we're still on one of those coaster things. It's whizzing around at speed, and I'm sure it turned upside down at least once." "I know exactly what you mean. The world we thought we knew just got turned upside down today. Draco, I thought sitting with the girls at the pool yesterday was the greatest day of my life. Today just blasted that to smithereens. We took a boat ride through a jungle, saw pirates, and were shooting down a water slide while sitting inside a log. How are you supposed to deal with all that? I used to think having a good time was attending parties and looking down your nose at those lower in class than us. I actually used to practice my 'you're unworthy' sneer in the mirror. The Muggles have built a whole magical kingdom to do nothing but have fun in, and they really know how to have fun. Draco, I'm beginning to wonder what else we've been told that isn't true. Did you see Hermione in that bikini thing yesterday? Merlin? She's a Muggle born yet smarter and more powerful than both of us. She's also gorgeous. An Order of Merlin first class, holder and blood bonded to Harry. How the hell does that fit with anything we've been taught as pure bloods? I would be very careful saying that out loud, Blaze. You wouldn't want to upset your girlfriend, and certainly not her sister or any of the others. Oh, I'm happy with Parvati. That's not what I meant. We're both pure bloods, yet I can honestly say Hermione is way out of our league. Even though she's a Muggle born, I can see that, yet it goes directly against everything we've both been taught. Something obviously isn't right, but how can we not believe what we're both seeing with our own eyes? I think we'll both need our eyes tested after tomorrow. Do you really believe Muggles can fire themselves into space using rockets? Shit, Draco, I'm barely coping with what we saw today. I don't think I can cope with tomorrow. Tomorrow, the ball was tomorrow, and Augustus was ready. He'd been ready for a couple of weeks. He'd spent those weeks refining his plan until he couldn't make the slightest improvement to it. It now all came down to tomorrow. It really could only end one of two ways. Tomorrow would either be the greatest day in Augustus Rookwood's life, or his last. His distilled and refined plan now saw him and Bella standing at their master's side, the Dark Lord's two most trusted advisors and enforcers. While he would be the brains of the duo, there was no doubting who held the power. Bellatrix was the most powerful witch Augustus had ever laid eyes on. She was also as beautiful as she was crazy, which added another level of danger to tomorrow. No matter how well he planned and schemed, Augustus was faced with only one utter certainty. He had no idea how Bella would react when he approached her with this scheme tomorrow. The best he could calculate the odds were 50-50, meaning there was as much chance of Bella killing him as there was the Dementors, guards, or that swim. When his sensible side objected to him taking such a risk, it was swiftly clobbered into submission by the image of Bella standing at his side. Now there was a reason worth living, or dying for. Bill went upstairs to check on his sister, just to see if she really was all right about tonight. He found her lying on her bed and happily reading a book that appeared to be Muggle in origin. Her room was also decorated with pictures and souvenirs that she'd clearly accumulated over the summer. Bill was just thinking how much healthier this was for Ginny than her obsession over those stupid Boy Who Lived works of fiction when he was snapped out of his musings by a loud wolf whistle. "Looking hot there, Bill. Are you sure you don't have a date for tonight?" and have her sitting at the same table as Mum. This had Ginny giggling with laughter. Mum would be planning the wedding before the first dance was over. Smart move, Bill. So why aren't you downstairs getting ready to leave? I wanted to check my favorite sister wasn't too upset about missing the ball this year. Looks like I could have saved myself a trip. Oh, I knew I wouldn't be able to attend a couple of weeks ago. All the places were sorted when we were in Florida. I am a bit disappointed, but you really should have been there last year. I also have an invite to a birthday party in Kinkassy tomorrow and then another Merlin ball to look forward to at the end of September. That really was the best party I'd ever been to until Ron tried to spoil it by shouting at Parvati for dating a Slytherin. I have a lot of friends in Slytherin, so I don't know what his problem is. Bill's heart was fit to burst with pride at how well Ginny had turned her situation around. When did you get so smart? I hang about with smart people, Bill. Harry and the gang are pretty easygoing until it comes to the subject of bigotry. They just won't stand for it. The more I think about it, the more I see they're right to be like that. There's no house or blood bias in Crow's Marauders. That would be an insult to the person the club is named after. Ron doesn't give you any hassle about your Slytherin friends, does he? Oh, he hit the roof when he found out I was going on holiday with some of them. Then Fred and George hit him with a load of pranks, and suddenly Ron didn't really care who I was going on holiday with. Those two have gotten really good. Even Mum couldn't change Ron back from the things they did to him. She had to threaten both of them with not going to Egypt to get the twins to reverse it. Bill knew Master Pitsley expected the twins to ace their potions. OKWL, a year early too. He had a feeling both their parents were going to get a shock from the twins' new attitude. They still played pranks but had gotten a lot more methodical about it. With a hug from his sister, he headed off to accompany their parents to tonight's awards ball. As the guests of honor were waiting to be called into the ballroom, Molly was busy trying to thank everyone for taking Ginny to Florida, while at the same time asking if they were sure about taking the twins to Egypt. She was describing in great detail what Fred and George had done to Ron at the beginning of the summer. Not knowing this just endeared the twins more to the group. The Patil sisters in particular had great trouble containing their laughter. Molly wasn't laughing when she spotted Draco Malfoy in the company. Only Bill's firm hand on her arm prevented a rant. She was quickly led over to a corner where her eldest son had a quiet but firm word with her. Lucius Malfoy set the basilisk loose in Hogwarts. Not his son. He's in Azkaban paying for that crime. Draco being in this company tells the country that the innocent shouldn't suffer along with the guilty. 3 of the girls here were attacked by the basilisk and Parvati was possessed by that diary. If they can accept Draco being here, then you have no right to say anything about it. There are others who might, and then you'll see how this family operates. They're very like us, Mum. What do we do if someone attacks a Weasley? This left Molly floundering for words, not something she was used to. She also had to defer to Bill's knowledge of these people. He was the expert here. Arthur had no opportunity to invite Ginny this year. They received 2 invitations, with Bill's coming to him as an assistant ambassador. She would try to keep her mouth shut while her eyes and ears remained wide open. This extended family were having such an effect on the Weasleys that Molly really couldn't afford to insult any of them with a tirade. Apart from holidays and education, Ambassador Barchoke had saved Arthur's life and then warded the borough. That cut them an immeasurable amount of slack as far as Molly was concerned. The group had 3 tables tonight, purely because they would have needed a Hogwarts-sized one to accommodate all of them. The tables for 10 were alongside each other, so while they had to occupy specific seats for the meal, the seating would become fluid once the dancing started. Neville and Padma led the group into the ballroom tonight, and again, the Goblin tailors had done them proud. This year, though, both were friends of the nation and wore their blades with pride. The biggest shock of the night was reserved for the couple who followed them into the ballroom. Frank and Alice were now officially retired from the Auror Corps, but both were still entitled to wear their dress uniforms to formal functions, and functions didn't come any more formal than this. An impressive number of awards were pinned to the breast of their robes, having been added to by Amelia recently, who presented the couple with the award for Aurors injured in the line of duty. It was Amelia, seated at the ministry table, who broke the stunned silence by standing and beginning the applause that quickly became thunderous. The Longbottoms were one of the oldest pureblood families in Britain, and seeing these two almost back from the dead was certainly something worth applauding. Smita and Ramrao followed the Longbottoms. The couple had again chosen traditional Indian dress, which certainly added colour to the group. Preve and Blaze were both in clothes designed and produced by the Goblins, with a similarly dressed Luna walking beside Augusta in her traditional British robes to complete the first of their tables. The new Lady Black was on her husband's arm as she led the members of their table into the ballroom. They were followed by their table's other award winner, Tonks, on the arm of Remus. The Hobson and Tonks parents preceded Draco and Pansy to fill the Black family table. There were more than a few eyebrows raised at the final couple, although the vast majority of those eyebrows owners agreed with their inclusion. Crow was on record saying only the guilty should be punished. Here was a perfect example of what he preached being put into practice. If this group could accept the son of Lucius Malfoy into their company, then there was hope for their society yet. Harry and Hermione led the procession toward their table, with Dan and Emma following on behind. The Goblin Ambassador and his assistant came next, with Arthur and Molly taking up position behind them. Susan and Hannah completed their table, the restriction on numbers meaning neither which could invite a date. Both thought this was a small price to pay to be here tonight. When everyone was settled, Minister Fudge rose and made his way toward the small and as yet unoccupied bandstand. He stood there for a moment, just looking over the people who had crammed in here to witness tonight's award ceremony. Last summer we decided to break with tradition, and as well as making this event less formal, we held the speeches at the beginning of the evening. Since we find ourselves in a similar situation tonight, it appears as if we've started a whole new tradition. His eyes found Harry's for the next part of his carefully prepared speech. I stood on this very spot last year, extolling the virtues of a family who fought against the darkness that threatened our country in times past. It would seem some here actually listened to what I said and drew inspiration from my words of wisdom. Either that or they just followed Harry. The minister, making a joke at his own expense, earned a laugh and was a good start to the evening. The 6 people we're all here to honor tonight stood together against opponents so dark and deadly, their courage defies description. As if having to defeat the biggest basilisk in recorded history wasn't enough of a feat, they also stopped the return of the self-proclaimed Dark Lord Voldemort. Using that name drew some screams from the audience, and not all of them from witches. I think you would have to agree, these awards are certainly merited. Please show your appreciation as they come up onto the stage to collect their Orders of Merlin. First class, Emilia then approached the stage carrying a silver tray containing their medals as the minister read the Roll of Honor. Neville Longbottom, Padma Patil, Hermione Granger, Lady Henrika Black and Aurora Tonks. Again everyone was up on their feet applauding like crazy. There was also hardly a dry eye at the 3 guests of honor tables. They had of course discussed the subject of speeches beforehand, and Neville found himself elected to give one for the entire group, simply by the process of elimination. They all had an input into the words that would be said tonight. They would simply have more impact being delivered by the eldest son of an old and respected pureblood family. Neville hated that reasoning, mainly because he knew they were right. It should be the words that were important, more than the blood status of the person who said them. He knew they would have less impact though coming from a Swedish Vila, a British Muggle-born or an Indian witch. Tonks was a ministry employee and couldn't really court controversy with her job as an Aurora, so Neville was left to be it. He looked down to his beaming parents and proud grandmother, and Neville Longbottom stood tall. We worked and survived that day as a team, and it was a team decision that I would speak for all of us tonight. The 4 ladies teamed up on me and decided I was doing it, after remembering that those same 4 ladies were all Orders of Merlin, first-class holders. I did the only thing I could and agreed with them. This again drew a fair amount of laughter from the crowd, adding to Neville's confidence. Harry said it first back in Hogwarts. We 4 friends are all so different that our friendship should never work. It does though, not in spite of those differences, but because we embrace those differences. We embrace them so much. Harry and I will now one day marry our best friends. This drew more laughter, cheers and a few good-natured jeers. The 7 of us who set off for the chamber were all different, and without those differences, I seriously doubt if any of us would have survived. I say 7 because the Lady Ravenclaw accompanied us too, and also played a vital role. We have 2 very good friends with us tonight who would have died in a Hogwarts corridor without the protection the ghosts deliberately provided for them. There were more than a few in the ballroom whose color drained to a ghostly tincture with that thought. Neville felt a hand rest on his shoulder and offer a squeeze of support. He turned his head to see Amelia acknowledging what he said was so terrifyingly true. Without Lady Black being able to blind the basilisk, we would have been defeated before we even started. Without Tonks and the Lady Ravenclaw keeping watch on the spirit of Tom Riddle, we wouldn't have been able to concentrate fully on dealing with the basilisk. Without Harry and Hermione's goblin blades, we wouldn't have been able to eventually bring the beast down. Yet without Padma and my wands pulling the basilisk away from them, they wouldn't have been able to escape those deadly jaws for long. I think Hermione's father said it best. If we hadn't all gone down there, we wouldn't have all come back up alive. It took all of our differences working together to achieve a result I still find unbelievable. Neville had the entire hall hanging on his every word, but it was to his parents he looked now. I've stood here tonight and spoke to you about what can be achieved when we embrace our differences and work together. I'm looking at another wonderful example right in front of me now. By utilizing the wide range of knowledge amongst my friends' parents, my own parents were able to walk in here on my 13th birthday and see their son be one of a group who received this award. I hope you'll forgive me when I say that means much more to me than the actual award itself. That the entire ballroom was up on its feet and applauding was a fair indication they not only forgave, but understood as well. Cornelius watched Neville step back amongst his fellow award winners to many hugs and congratulations. The minister let the applause die down before stepping forward himself. I agree wholeheartedly with everything that courageous young wizard just said, and would also like to welcome Frank and Alice Longbottom back amongst us once more. We give thanks to our goblin friends for making this possible, and for inviting healers from St. Mungo's to their medical facility inside Gringotts, so this remarkable accomplishment may benefit even more people. That last part had been known by only a select few. It was certainly news that was welcome here tonight. Now, as the Lady Ravenclaw can't leave Hogwarts Castle, that leaves us with one other member of the team who risked their lives that day to thank Harry Crow. While the ministry was well aware it was granting land and a title to a goblin, Cornelius didn't want to rub tonight's guests' noses in it by announcing Centurion Crow. Harry had readily agreed to this compromise. It was a small price to pay for what the nation was receiving. Since most of you would have been here last year, you will of course be aware that this young man is already an Order of Merlin, first-class recipient, an award he proudly has pinned on his jacket tonight. As the acknowledged leader of the group of rescuers, and the most severely injured after the basilisk targeted his blood-bonded mate, we at the ministry wanted to show our appreciation for his bravery in a different manner. Please will you welcome on stage Harry Crow, Baron of Kinglesey. Harry rose to great applause and made his way on stage where the Minister of Magic presented him with that oh-so-precious scroll of parchment. There would be goblin builders in Kinsey before they returned to Hogwarts in September. Being conscious of not wanting to upstage Neville's speech, Harry kept it short and simple. That he allowed everyone to see how heartfelt his words were just increased the power behind those words. I think I said last year that family was everything to me. Thanks to that spirit of cooperation Neville mentioned a moment ago, I have my godfather and godmother here tonight. That members of my family are already considering Kinsey as home might give you some idea of what this award means to me, and for that I simply can't thank you enough. This drew loud applause, but Harry had something else he wanted to say. My father taught me to do what is right rather than what is easy. Something he lived up to by risking his own life while saving a young witch and her daughter inside this very building. I would like to dedicate this award to him, because he's my hero. Harry had added that last bit in himself, only talking with Hermione about its inclusion. It was hard to tell how the ballroom received it. The 3 tables at the front and those on stage were generating enough noise to compensate for any lack of applause from elsewhere. They then had to pose for the obligatory photographs before the minister made sure to shake everyone's hand as they made their way back off the stage. The 6 received heroes' welcomes as they returned to their tables and family. Barchoke broke with tradition by embracing both his daughter and son. "You all keep talking about bringing down barriers. I thought it was time this one fell too, but only on special occasions." Hermione had to wipe the tears from her eyes from witnessing this, knowing how much this gesture meant to both of them. As they settled down for dinner, Molly attempted to make a joke. "No vials of fake blood this year, Harry? Mrs. Weasley, down in the chamber we all saw enough of the real thing to last us a lifetime. On a bleak isle in the middle of the North Sea. Blood was also on the mind of Augustus Rookwood. It was time to see if those months and months of effort, pain and sacrifice were actually going to be worth it." Having finished his protection medallion earlier than anticipated, he then made a few minor modifications. His last incisor had been sacrificed to bore a hole in the medallion, with more of his long hair being pulled out and threaded through it to allow his precious protection to be worn around his neck. Blood had also been added to this woven hair necklace. Any smidgen of extra protection was very welcome. It was now time to see if it and his straw wand worked as well as he hoped. A simple Alamara was greeted with a click, allowing the Death Eater to inch open the door and peer along the gloomy corridor. Dementors prefer the dark, and the Ministry weren't about to spend a knot on their prisoners' comfort. Only eyes that had long become accustomed to the darkness allowed him to see anything at all. He clutched the medallion to his chest as a Dementor approached, hoping he would at least have time to force the door shut if the creature reacted to his presence. With Augustus' heart beating loud enough for the Dementor to hear it thump, the dark creature glided serenely past, completely uninterested in him. After discovering that both his creations were a success, it was time to put the rest of his scheme into operation. He wasn't 100% sure where Bellatrix's cell exactly was, but found it easily enough on the same side as his and only 3 along. He looked through the small barred opening on her door, the faint moonlight filtering through the recessed and heavily barred cell window, allowing Augustus the chance to gaze upon his first woman in a decade. "Bellatrix." She sat up on her mattress instantly. A voice coming from where no voice should be certainly grabbed her attention. She may be considered crazy, but no one ever called her stupid. Bella may have been startled, yet her voice never rose above the whisper her unexpected visitor had used. "Rookwood, what the fuck are you doing out there?" He then said the words guaranteed to get her full attention and support. "I intend to escape and help our master return. I need your help, though." That was all Bella needed to hear. She was now at the small barred opening with her face pressed against the bars. "Anything, Rookwood, you know I'll do anything. I think our master made Horcruxes. I also think he gave one to you for safekeeping. If you tell me where it is, I'll give you an oath. I'll use it to bring our master back." Even with their faces now mere inches apart, her groan of disappointment was barely audible. Bella's distress, though, was clearly there for Augustus to see. "I can't. It's in our vault at Gringotts, and only a Lestrange can enter." While he'd been expecting no other answer, he managed to look as disappointed as she was. His entire scheme relied on Bella reaching her own conclusions to take this forward. The route he hoped to guide her on needed to seem like Bella's own idea. "You got out your cell, can't you get me out too? 2 of us would have a much better chance of getting out of this fucking dump together. I can get you out of your cell, I can't get you past the Dementors. They only leave me alone because of this. It took months to make and required blood bonding to me. I couldn't make another one even if I wanted to. I don't have enough teeth left, and the time needed would mean the sea would be far too cold for us to survive in the water." Bella was staring at the medallion like a starving child would look through a baker's shop window. Here was something far more precious than any order of Merlin. "I'm more than ready to bleed to get out of here. What if I chewed a couple of my fingers off? You could sit in your cell and rub them into the stone. Would that work quickly enough?" "I honestly don't know, but my best guess would be no. The medallion is blood-bound to me and might not accept another." His pause had Bella instantly coming back at him, just as he planned. "What? You've thought of something, haven't you?" "I had an idea. It's a crazy one, though." "You want crazy, then you came to the right fucking place. I can certainly do crazy, so tell me. This was the part that could blow upon his face. But Augustus ploughed ahead. The stone is blood-bound to me. It will also offer the same protection to anyone blood-bonded to me. Augustus just left that hanging. It wasn't hanging there for long before Bella snatched at the bait. What have I got to do? We cut the palm of our hands, say a few words and then consummate the bond. You mean I get fucked too? Bella's hand was instantly through the bars. Augustus had also sharpened one edge of the medallion for this very purpose. He cut both their palms before clasping her dainty hand in his calloused shovel of a mitt. I am yours, and you are mine. Bella repeated the words, and a glow appeared around their joined hands. They glowed past their wrists, surprising Augustus. He assumed that their joint desire to get out of here and join their master would at least be enough to heal their hands. He didn't expect any more than that. Bella's healed hand was withdrawn back into her cell, and this was now the moment of truth for Augustus. The runes on the medallion were made to protect two people, providing one of them was him. His greatest wish was to have sex with a willing woman that didn't have to be potioned or under the influence of the Imperius, for that woman to be Bellatrix Lestrange. He was willing to risk his very life. He also knew he was certainly taking his life into his hands, entering that door. It could be so worth it, though. He entered her cell to find Bella had discarded her threadbare robe and was lying on her straw mattress. There was no underwear anywhere in sight. "Oh, is my little baby shy? Come and let Bella look after you. Don't you dawdle now? We have things to do and other places to be." Augustus needed no further invitation. "If Aura Tonks is free tomorrow night, I have an invitation to a joint birthday party and no date." Tonks was loving the banter she shared with Remus. Their week in Florida had allowed their relationship to develop to the point where they were both very comfortable joking with each other. Neither was prepared just yet to put a label on exactly what their relationship was, but both were happy where they were at the moment. "Since I've already been invited by the young ladies organizing the event, it shouldn't be too much of an imposition to turn upon the arm of Professor Lupin. You're actually a very good dancer." This put a smile on his face as a long-forgotten memory was dragged to the surface. Harry's grandmother said all young wizards needed to know how to dance. "She taught me, James and Sirius. You were really close, weren't you? We were like brothers, like family. That's why both Sirius and I understand Harry's drive for family. I thought I lost all of mine on the one night. Everything keeps returning to that one night and no one knows what really happened." Remus then surprised the hell out of the Aura. "Harry does. He remembers word for word what happened that night. Sirius told me one evening a bottle of fire whiskey took a hammering, said it was the most heartbreaking thing he'd ever heard. Two grown men sat and cried that evening. We both blamed it on the fire whiskey and we were both lying. Tonks just held him closer as they danced, thinking she had a good man here. To an outsider watching these two convicts rot like animals amongst the squalor of Bella's cell, they would rightly be disgusted. The couple, though, were both benefiting from their fornication, so weren't exactly courting public opinion on their sexual activities. As Augustus was experiencing a wonderful afterglow, Bella was cooing softly in his ear and running her hand lovingly through his now sparse hair. "Oh, that's my big, strong wizard. Bella will look after you. Now you've given me one wand. It's time to hand over the other." This shocked Augustus, but Bella just continued with her soothing ministrations. "As we are now blood-bonded, that wand should recognize me too. You, my clever man, are the brains here. But when it comes to wands, I think you'll agree I'm the expert." In all his calculations, here was one Augustus had not thought of. "Oh, my poor baby, don't you worry your pretty little head. Bella will take good care of both your wands. I've just had the best sex for over a decade. I would hate to have to kill the person who just gave me that pleasure." Augustus suddenly felt the sharpened edge of his medallion caressing his throat. He immediately agreed with his new mate. This shockingly earned him a kiss. No woman had ever willingly kissed him before. "I knew you were a clever one. Now let's get on with what has to be done." Watching as she pulled what passed for a robe over her head, he offered a warning. "I don't know how much magic that wand can take." He was again cut off by a kiss on his ravaged mouth. "You do very good work. This wand is better than you think it is. So just trust me." Watching as this witch seemed to change character from moment to moment was both terrifying and electrifying at the same time. Seeing Bella with a wand in her hand was just downright scary, though. They held onto the braided hair necklace that was attached to the medallion and crept out into the corridor. Bella headed straight for a specific cell, and Augustus had no option but to follow. "Roddy, you there, my baby? Where the fuck else would I be, you crazy bitch? How did you get out of your cell?" As Rodolphus pressed his face into the bars in order to see what was happening, Bella's new wand cast a low-powered cutting curse at his neck. While the curse may have been low-powered, it was cast from mere inches away and with a surgeon's precision. Rodolphus Lestrange found his jugular sliced open and, despite clutching his throat with both hands, his lifeblood was spurting between his fingers and splattering all over his cell. "Consider this the end of our marriage. You lousy bastard, you'll never cheat on me again with that Ponzi brother of yours. I want your last dying thoughts to be that I've found a better man to replace you, and your precious brother is next on my list." Bella moved to the next cell, almost daring Augustus to say something. He wisely didn't. She opened the cell door to find Rabastan curled in the furthest away corner, crying, while physically shaking with fear. "You're not worth a curse, you piece of shit." Rabastan's shuddering was now more in relief. After hearing those words and watching the crazy bitch leave, that was until he noticed she'd left the cell door wide open. The death that then came calling was tall, dark, but in no way could a Dementor be considered handsome. Fucking arranged marriage to hide the fact they'd been screwing each other since they were both at Hogwarts, then people have the nerve to blame me for not providing an heir. I wanted to torture both those bastards to death years ago, but our master had some use for them too fucking bad. I will gladly suffer our master's displeasure for killing both those pieces of shit after we bring him back. I have one other marriage needing ended before we leave this fucking dump for good." Hearing the cell door opening was a shock that woke the sleeping wizard. That shock was nothing, though, in comparison to the terrifying nightmare of recognizing the person who just entered his cell. "Hello, Lucius. Surprised to see me? I told you I would make you pay for destroying one of our master's most precious possessions. I'm here to make my sister a widow too." He found himself being dragged off his mattress by the hair, and his last conscious thought was, where the hell did Bella get her hands on a wand? As Malfoy blood pumped from his jugular to form a pool on the cell floor, Bella dipped her fingers in the warm liquid and began to write a message on the wall. Augustus had just watched his new mate kill her husband, and both her brothers-in-law, all in the space of a few minutes. He didn't think this witch could possibly turn him on any more than he was now, as there were now 3 of them, though one occupant was dead, crammed into this tiny cell, and he had to stay close to his mate because of the medallion. When Bella bent down for more blood, she couldn't help but notice just how turned on he was. "Now, my big strong man likes his little lady taking care of business. We'll take care of that later and then have a midnight swim together. How romantic is that for our first night as mates?" "Bella, what are you doing? Showing this arse's blood is good for something. I intend to leave a message here that will have the ministry shitting themselves. Potter will die at the hands of our master. We don't have a lot of time, nor would it be a good idea to tell them exactly what we're up to." The flash of temper behind her eyes had Augustus fearing he was about to join Malfoy bleeding on the floor. She caught herself, though, and pushed her body suggestively back into his groin as she bent for more Malfoy blood. "That's why you're the brains, lover, and I look after the wands. A few seconds and I'll be finished here." They left the cell hand in hand, with the protection medallion clasped between their joined palms. Behind them, only the cooling body of Lucius Malfoy bore testament to the bloody writing on the wall. "Potter will die. Harry thought Hermione was going to kill him, so he escaped by asking Emma to dance." They had no sooner started when Harry was looking for advice. "I can't understand why she's so angry. It's your first ever function at King Usse, Harry. Hermione just wants it to be special. All I need is Hermione there. That will make it special for me. She's been fretting over this party for days. It's all she can talk about. I thought she would like me inviting the Minister of Magic to the party." Emma couldn't help but smile at his naivety. She loved the occasional glimpses of Harry as a young man growing up, and not a centurion. "When she calms down, she will. At the moment, Hermione will be checking over everything in her head to make sure it's perfect for tomorrow. Aren't you the one who's always saying someone's birthday is their most special day? So, asking the minister was a bad thing. No, Harry, you did right. It just raises the profile of the event and Hermione will put more pressure on herself to get everything right. Imagine if your director was coming. But he is. This was certainly news to Emma. Oh shit, does Hermione know that? Her question had Harry thinking for a moment, providing its own answer to Emma before he replied. I'm not sure, Father only told me earlier on tonight. It's a great honor for the director to attend your birthday celebrations, and Hermione will put even more pressure on herself. I'm an idiot. I should have told her at once and said what I was thinking before asking the minister. Every time I think I'm getting the hang of this, something else comes along and shows me I'm not. Emma thought Harry was beating himself up over nothing and tried to show him that. Does Hermione know all the do's and don'ts of goblin culture, Harry? She's learning all the time, but it's only been 2 years. Even Hermione couldn't learn all there is to know in that time. She could see the penny had dropped, and Emma pressed home her advantage. You say goblins are a simple people, but it will take Hermione longer to master your culture, a perfectly understandable conclusion. Why should you then think you could possibly achieve mastery for both Muggle and magical societies in the same amount of time? By the time the dance ended, Harry had his plan of action worked out. I'll ask Father if there is anything special we need to do for the director attending, and then I'll have all the information for Hermione before I tell her. Thanks, Mum. This was punctuated by a kiss on the cheek as Harry returned Emma to her seat. Anyone who witnessed that byplay was saying nothing about it. If they hadn't watched Dolores Umbridge's demise at last year's ball, they had at least heard what happened. They had also heard Harry say that to him family was everything. There would be not one word said against the Muggle he just called Mum, and only a total idiot would actually consider attacking the woman. The mum in question was just delighted to be able to fill that coveted role for her children. She was having to be a tad unconventional, but that didn't bother Emma in the slightest. Her 2 teenagers might have a whole different set of relationship issues. They needed guidance on. Arranging a birthday party that would now include 2 national leaders sprang immediately to mind. But Emma knew their final destination would be a happy marriage. All she needed to do was offer guidance and steer them around the myriad of obstacles that kept appearing in their path. The course of true love was certainly not a smooth one, but Emma was sure these 2 would find their way to that destination eventually. Augustus struggled to guide Bella from her preferred path, finally convincing her that taking on the guards with only one homemade straw wand between them was an unnecessary and unacceptable risk. Both had many years' experience of the guards' routines in the high-security wing. With no more than 6 guards watching the entire prison at night and none of them patrolling, they knew their escape wouldn't be discovered until their morning rounds. Augustus was finally able to make Bella see that they needed those precious hours to get off the island undetected, rather than take the risk of a guard being able to raise the alarm before they could kill all of them. Both could hear the guards inside a small building near the side gate they planned to exit from. It sounded like the guards were playing some sort of card game and money was changing hands. More importantly, they weren't paying any attention to what was happening outside that room. Bella held her nerve as they waited in the shadows for a diversion. A loud exchange that signaled there were winners and losers was their opportunity, and she cast Alohomora at the door. There was now so much cursing and swearing going on in the guardhouse, though, the pair could probably have tap-danced their way to freedom and not been noticed. They headed down the existing path to the shore, not daring to cast a Lumos to light their way. Having got this far, the final part of Augustus' plan called for a quick check of the shore for a piece of washed-up debris that would float, and then hope the wand would be able to handle a warming spell before they took to the water. Bella had other ideas. After they gathered large pieces of driftwood, she directed Augustus to lay them out in a crude shape. He then got to watch a master at work as Bella coaxed every last particle of magic through the wand he had so lovingly created. Before it finally and inevitably fell apart, Bella had managed to configure the driftwood into a very rudimentary canoe. If I'd used the sharp edge of that medallion to kill Malfoy, I might have been able to squeeze a couple of paddles out of the wand too. Don't worry, baby. We'll still get our romantic swim, as I couldn't put enough magic into this to make it permanent. Now we need to find something we can use as paddles. In his wildest dreams, Augustus never thought he would leave his cabin in a boat with Bellatrix Lestrange sitting between his legs. Since they would both rather paddle than swim, they were pushing their craft as hard as they could through the water in a roughly westerly direction. Neither was in good physical shape, but both had wills of iron that were ignoring the pain signals from long unused muscles. The lungfuls of air Augustus's body was demanding for these unaccustomed exertions smelled and tasted wonderful. There was a hint of freedom in the air, add in Bella's aroma from mere inches away, and mix with the salty spray to form quite an intoxicating concoction. Of course, Bella could feel his reaction as their paddling rhythm had her continually brushing against him. I know it's hard, my poor baby, but you'll need to save it. We wouldn't just rock the boat, we'd sink it. With the Dark Lord as my master, and you as my mate, things are finally looking up for little Bella. As far as Augustus was concerned, that was a bit of an understatement. His life had just taken a spectacular upturn. Not only was he free, Bellatrix Lestrange was now his very willing mate. He only had one more thing to accomplish tonight, and that should happen naturally when their canoe reverted back to its components. The protection medallion was back around his neck, and entering the water should dissolve the hair held together by blood necklace, sending the medallion safely to the seabed. Since it would only work against the Dementors whilst he was inside Azkaban or the Ministry itself, Augustus no longer had any use for it. It would have been a nice souvenir to keep of what he considered to be his greatest ever achievement. It was also damning evidence against him, and needed to be consigned to the bottom of the sea. He didn't know if Bella had enough knowledge of runes to be able to decipher that she'd been tricked into bonding with him. Their master certainly did, though. After watching what she did to those 3 former family members tonight without even a flicker of remorse, he certainly didn't want Bella's anger to ever be focused in his direction. Every hour their little craft held together did wonders for their chances of eventually making landfall. Their arms might be dead by then, but they should be able to hold onto a piece of their transfigured canoe and use their legs to kick for shore. Before he tried his wand and medallion, Augustus didn't know if he would see tomorrow. Now he was beginning to allow himself to look forward to it. Those thoughts certainly kept his makeshift paddle pushing them through the water. Hermione couldn't wait until tomorrow. She sneaked into Harry's room to find him lying in bed but still awake. Hermione, what are you doing here? Our parents will go nuts if they find you in my room at this time of morning. He got out of bed just in case they were discovered. Both of them on his bed would certainly be harder to explain. I wanted to apologize for earlier. I can get so hung up on the details I forget what's important. You. She put her arms around him as they shared a loving kiss. Harry was very aware Hermione was wearing thin summer pajamas and no bra as she held him close. I also wanted to be the first one to wish you a happy birthday. Happy birthday, Harry. This was followed by another kiss that left both of them gasping for breath. Wow, Hermione, this is already my best birthday ever. So, am I forgiven then? Harry kissed her gently and held his mate close, running his hands through Hermione's hair, terrified to let them wander anywhere else. I told you we would argue because we're both strong-willed and downright stubborn. As long as we remember that I am yours and you are mine, always, then we'll be fine. I just love your way of apologizing, though I hope you saved that method just for me. This earned a slight giggle from his mate. Now get out of here before those pajamas drive me crazy. I've seen your dad fire a shotgun and have no wish to be a target. She, of course, couldn't leave without the application of another birthday kiss, sending a very happy Harry back to bed and looking forward to tomorrow. Breakfast that morning in Kingersea was a lot of fun. The teasing was spread around the table, with Alice and Frank taking their fair share for managing to upstage everyone at last night's ball. And again in today's profit. Both were apologetic, and yet neither could quite understand why everyone seemed delighted by this turn of events, rather than upset. Padma attempted to explain to her future in-laws, "We've all had a shot at the limelight, and none of us like it. What's written there in the Prophet is not only a good story, it's also all true. 2 decorated auras from the First War recovering enough to rejoin society is a far greater achievement than what we did for a few hours. One horrible morning in a damp and smelly chamber, I still love Harry's new house though. Eyes off Patil, this birthday boy is mine. Hermione couldn't hold her giggling as she wrapped her bonded in a pretend possessive embrace. Alice was finding herself drawn to Smeeta. The two mothers got on very well. It was to her she turned for a quiet word. Are they always like this? Oh, you'll see for yourself over the next week. 1 minute they can be so serious, throwing curses at each other while training. Next minute they're throwing each other into the sea and behaving like the teenagers they really are. I was originally concerned that one of my daughters was learning all this defense, not anymore. They managed to balance all the seriousness with plenty of time to have fun. Amelia was then shown into the dining room, and having fun was clearly the last thing on her mind. She barely acknowledged Susan's presence. It was also clear she was the bearer of bad tidings. Her first actions, though, surprised everyone. Frank and Alice, I need you both to drink this first. It's a calming draught. We can't risk the news you're about to hear affecting your recovery. Just remember, every single person you care about is sitting safely in this room. After giving the potion a moment or two to take effect, Amelia delivered her news. There was an incident at Azkaban last night. We don't have all the details yet, but here's the main ones. Both Lestrange brothers, along with Lucius Malfoy, were found dead in their cells. The bad news is that Bellatrix Lestrange and Augustus Rookwood are both officially listed as missing. Even with the administration of the calming draught, the effect this news had on the Longbottom couple was unmistakable. Augusta had lost these two before. She was not about to sit here and meekly watch them retreat back into themselves. Harry, could I impose on your hospitality for a glass of whiskey? She had no sooner said the words when a decanter of single malt and a set of glasses, complete with silver tray, appeared on the table. Augusta poured herself a measure before standing and offering her own toast. To the demise of two of the bastards who harmed my family. I hope they died screaming and that a certain crazy bitch joins them soon. Sirius poured some more glasses, and then he, Remus, Barchoke and Amelia joined Augusta in her toast. Dan and Emma had no clue what was going on here, until Hermione whispered that it was the three Lestrangers that had attacked Frank and Alice. Augusta was oblivious to all the byplay. Her eyes never left those of her son and daughter-in-law. These are different times. It isn't like before. We sit here in a house. I'm certain no Death Eater can get near. This was quickly confirmed by Barchoke. Not only the house, Augusta, this entire glen was warded last night, so no one carrying the dark mark can get within half a mile of the house. She pushed home her point to her children. Hogwarts and Longbottom Manor have those very same wards, and tomorrow we're going to an island that you need an invite from Harry before you can even see it. There will be no hiding behind dubious charms and listening to old fools this time. The Longbottoms will put their faith in goblin wards and Amelia's auras being able to catch the bitch. Amelia, though, had more bad news. It would seem the Longbottoms are not their target. There was a message scrawled in blood inside Malfoy's cell. Potter will die. The teens had rallied around to support Neville and his parents. Hearing this saw the focus shift to Harry. A Harry who appeared pissed off as he saw Emma having to clamp her hand over her mouth to stifle a scream. Seriously, what is it with writing messages on walls with blood? Didn't Voldemort teach his Death Eaters how to use quills, ink and parchment? Suddenly remembering that they had an author of some of those bloody messages sitting at breakfast with them, Harry turned to Parvati to apologize when she burst into giggles, being quickly joined by Barchoke's baritone laughter. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a goblin sense of humor in action. Harry Crow, aren't you in the slightest bit worried? Hermione, I'm a centurion with 3 orders of Merlin, first-class holders, who have blades and wands guarding my back. I also agree with Augusta. They can't get at us and Amelia will have her auras scouring the country for them. I have no intention of letting this news rule my life, and tonight's party is most certainly still going ahead. Harry, the minister, wants to appoint an aura guard to you. He was back at Amelia instantly with an answer. Tonks? Only the best will do for the boy who lived, and Remus liked seeing her in a bikini beside the pool in Florida. That's practically all she'll need on the island anyway. It was Sirius who led the laughter this time, delighted that his godson got one over on his fellow marauder. Emilia was also trying to hide her smile as she spoke to her Auror, an Auror who had clearly spent the night in Knossi. "Well, Auror Tonks, do you accept the assignment? All Auror leave has been cancelled while we search for these two, and the island is spectacularly beautiful. Searching the country for a pair of escaped murderers or protection duty on a tropical island wasn't exactly a hard choice, especially since Remus was going to be there too. Tonks didn't want to seem too eager though. I don't know, boss. What happens if I want to murder the person I'm supposed to be guarding? You are a professional, Auror Tonks. I would expect you to make sure you're not caught." This generated even more laughter, leaving Neville grateful for the calming effect the merriment was having on his parents. He had something to say, though, and looked to his friend. "Harry, we head for the island tomorrow, and there's too many arrangements made for Egypt to change. I was going to give the last week a miss, though." Catching on at once, Harry agreed. "That's a great idea, Neville. Another week to spend in Kingsley sounds wonderful to me, too. What does everyone else think?" All could see Neville wanted to stay close to his parents until this threat was dealt with. The lure of returning to Japan was strong, but one of their own needed support. There was no decision to be made, and a consensus was quickly reached. "Great, now you know I'll be here, and everyone is welcome any time. Harry, should we contact McGonagall and bring forward the meeting with the new Potter Scholarship students?" Both members of the selection board thought Hermione's suggestion was a very good one. They knew Natalie's parents weren't too keen on her attending any boarding school, never mind a magical one. But Choke, meanwhile, had some words of advice for Emilia. "How this is publicly dealt with could be just as important as your search for these escapees. Pictures of a certain birthday party, and Harry publicly repeating his opinion on the matter, could go a long way to preventing the mass hysteria this news could generate." Harry had more to add. "Father, not everyone has wards they can live safely behind. I don't want anyone else to be targeted because of their association with me. There's an entire Hogwarts year group walking around wearing their silver crows on everything but their pajamas. I wear mine on my pajamas." Luna's words again generated some laughter, until Hermione put her arm around the girl as both she and Padma confirmed that to be true, and that Luna was not alone in this. Harry had noticed Colin and Ginny wearing theirs in Florida. He'd never actually see Luna without hers. "Can we get these turned into emergency portkeys? Set the destination to a safe room in Gringotts, just in case someone else gets their hands on one of those badges. Hermione has all Crow's marauders coming to the party tonight. It's a fair bet most of them will have their badges on them." Harry was actually blushing as he said that, knowing that every single Crow's marauder would have their badge pinned to whatever they wore. His father not only agreed, he had a further suggestion. "What about getting the Lily Potter Foundation involved? I was thinking along the lines of a Muggle-born Protection Act. Every Muggle-born student at Hogwarts gets their property warded to deny these animals access. If we could get all the parents together for a meeting, Dan and Emma could easily explain the benefits of these wards. We would need to work quickly, though, before Hogwarts restarts, as the wards need to be tied to a witch or wizard. It was the Muggle-borns they went after the last time." This received a very enthusiastic response from his son. "Fantastic idea, Father. If we could set that meeting up for us returning from Egypt, they could all have their houses warded before September the 1st. Hannah was the first to agree with that opinion. "Justin's a Muggle-born." Luna offered her support. "So is Colin and Natalie, who we've yet to meet." "Dean Thomas is the same," offered Parvati. "As is Terry. This is a great thing to do, Harry." Padma was very impressed at this proposed action. She was even more impressed at the kiss Hermione gave him as a reward. They were receiving no censorship from two proud Muggles who had spent a week in Florida with some of the people the teens had just mentioned. It became a lot more personal when you could put faces and personalities to statistics. That Harry wanted to protect them and their families left Emma wanting to kiss Harry too. Lucas and Moa just sat back and observed the family at work, rallying around to support those members who needed it. Both were staying until Hogwarts started up again. Whether that meant Japan, Kingsley or London didn't matter to them. It was the company that counted, that Henrika would have most of this company, and her husband around her when she returned to the castle, pleased them more than they could say. Alice had been told over and over again that things were different now. She was seeing the proof of that play out right in front of her. They, while in the Order of the Phoenix, had all just done whatever Albus Dumbledore suggested. Here, though, was a generation that thought and acted for itself. Opinions were offered and listened to with decisions then made. This was no dictatorship. She knew the calming potion was helping at the moment, but listening here was doing more to calm the terror that had raced through her body at that awful news. The big difference between drawing comfort from what was being said and the potion was these discussions weren't artificial and wouldn't wear off in a few hours. She glanced once more at her husband and saw only steely determination reflected back from his eyes. Alice knew what his next step would be. His tremors were subsiding, and his speech slowly improving. His magic, though, was fractured and would probably never return. Certainly not to the levels they once possessed. He'd been very impressed with Dan Granger, and Dan's ability to shoot. Here was a method Frank could still use to protect their family. Magical prejudices against guns be damned. With her own magic way out of kilter, she intended not only to support her husband in this matter, but join him in learning to shoot. Bringing that bitch Lestrange down with a bullet would be every bit as satisfying as ending her with a curse. Bella awoke to the sun on her face and the sound of seagulls' cries filling the air. It was strange how a person could miss the simplest of things. Not even seagulls would come anywhere near Azkaban. She also woke in the arms of a wizard she was only now getting her first real look at in the daylight. Where others might see pockmarked features and a ravaged mouth, Bella saw a man so dedicated to their master that he would pull his own teeth out and work for months to manufacture their escape. If only she had confided to him about the great treasure she protected for their master, both of them could have gotten out of there years ago. She ran her hand over Augustus' chest, finding the medallion gone. That must have happened when they had to swim for shore. Her canoe had held until, judging from the Muggle lights, they were about a mile from landfall. They had crawled on their hands and knees off the beach, collapsing exhausted upon finding the first semblance of cover. They were concealed from the beach amongst some grassy sand dunes, but they would have to move quickly. They needed to get away from here and under cover. Augustus was having such a wonderful dream. He was lying in the warm sand with a witch in his arms, kissing. He was startled awake from that wonderful dream by the sensation of Bella's tongue entering his mouth. "Good morning, lover. As much as I'd like to stay here and start the day off properly with you, we need to get away from the coast as quickly as possible." Augustus agreed with all of that. A quick look around let him see just how precarious their position was. "At a guess, I would say we're somewhere along the Aberdeenshire coast. We need to get inland and under cover before this place is crawling with Aurors. We need to get to Gringotts as quickly as possible." "No!" Augustus was a lot braver when Bella didn't have a weapon in her hand. They needed to have this discussion, so it might as well be now. They also needed to move, so he grabbed Bella's arm and steered her inland, while beginning his explanation. "We need information before doing anything. Yes, we both want to bring our master back, but that won't happen if we get caught. All those bastards who didn't end up in Azkaban have had over a decade to attempt it, and they've sat on their safe asses and done fuck all. There is only us, Bella, and we're only going to get one chance at this. Our master would prefer that we took our time and did this properly, rather than dive right in and maybe end any hope of ever bringing him back. This will take planning, my department, but we can't even make plans until getting our hands on more information." Bella had stopped tugging on his arm and was now walking at his side. Augustus took this to mean she was listening, so dropped the real bombshell. "I don't even know if you'll be allowed access to the Lestrange vault." She had stopped again, this time ready for a fight. Augustus expertly deflated her. "You murdered the last 2 male heirs in the Lestrange family last night, effectively ending their line. Any child you carry will certainly not bear the name Lestrange. The goblins will know this, and those greedy little bastards will take great pleasure in closing down the vault. Can you see the ministry objecting?" Bella began walking again and using her little girl voice. "Why didn't my big strong wizard stop little Bella making that mistake?" He didn't answer. They both knew the reason. Self-preservation. We all heard our master say he'd taken more steps toward immortality than any other wizard. We also both believe that we desperately need information before making our next move. If you can't gain access to the Lestrange vault, we may just have to go searching for our master and get his guidance on how best to help. Bella now slipped her hand in his. You are certainly the planner, lover, and a good one at that. How are we going to find this information? I was our Lord's inside man at the ministry. I know every one of his followers who worked there as well as the others we both know. They will help us, or I will let my mate loose on them. Oh, little Bella gets to play. Now that is a plan I like. The plan means we can't get caught though. We need food and clothes, but we can't go killing anyone to get them. Dead muggles along the coast will just alert the ministry to our location. At the moment they'll be having to cover at least 100 miles of coastline. We don't want those forces to be able to focus that manpower in a single area. They came upon a little cottage built to overlook the dunes and sea. It was probably some muggle's holiday home. It was lucky for the muggle owners that they weren't there that morning. While Augustus was scavenging some much-needed food for them in the little kitchen, Bella was searching the rest of the cottage for anything else they could use. She returned with a pile of clothes that she dropped on the floor. Augustus thought he was starving until Bella whipped off her robe and began trying on clothes. When she bent right down for the second time, giving Augustus a full view of her nude body and that amazing arse, he knew she was teasing him. As if trying to eat this food with so many teeth missing wasn't bad enough, Augustus was beginning to wonder if he'd bitten off more than he could chew with his mate too. He could certainly see Bella being the death of him. When they left the cottage, Augustus was bedecked in brown trousers, a white t-shirt with a red checked shirt over that. He had a large bag on his back, with their prison robes tucked in there to be disposed of later. Bella had jeans and a white hoodie emblazed with some sort of S emblem inside a shield. With the hiking boots completing their outfits, they had unknowingly stumbled on the disguise of a couple of backpackers, something that no one would cast a second look at. They left the cottage ransacked, with stuff thrown about everywhere, and leaving the local police to put it down to nothing more than kids breaking in and wrecking the joint. Bella felt a lot better, washed, fed, and in clean clothes. She also had a large knife tucked into the small of her back under the hoodie, and a smaller but just as sharp blade concealed up her sleeve. They not only knew where they were just outside Stonehaven, but now had a destination to head for. The Carrows lived around Dundee, leaving them a journey of around 50 miles. She had found a small tent and quilted bags that said they were for sleeping in stashed away in a cupboard, with the food her big strong wizard also had on his back. This journey should be like a picnic compared to sitting in a cell in Azkaban. Not being around Dementors was certainly having a positive effect on both of them. Amelia was against the minister signing the order that allowed Dementors to search for their 2 escaped prisoners, though it wasn't the kiss on sight part she objected to. Cornelius, at the moment all we've got is 2 prisoners missing from their cells. We don't even know that they made it to shore. If you're telling me there are enough auras to cover this entire coast, then I will gladly rescind this order. Otherwise I have no choice. We have prison doors being spelled open and a pair wizards murdered by cutting curses. That leaves us with the 2 very worst Death Eaters that were incarcerated in Azkaban now on the loose, and armed with wands. She had to concede the point. Amelia couldn't in all good conscience use trainees to search for the last 2 people she wanted to see escape Azkaban. She also had to have her auras working in teams, further reducing the ground they could cover. The Dementors would make up for that lack of manpower, but she liked the situation about as much as she liked the dark creatures themselves. Barchoke indicated that you should have a few words with Director Ragnok at the birthday party tonight. It seems as if Gringotts may be able to help us with this. You think I should still go to this party? Can't you see the Prophet would slaughter us for this? Killers on the loose, so the top officials in the ministry party the night away. This drew a smile from Amelia, a smile at just how devious the goblins were. She was certainly glad they were on their side. The Prophet was persuaded not to rush out a special edition on the breakout, a special edition that would have caused widespread panic. Their price for that accommodation is an invitation to tonight's party, an interview with the Minister of Magic and an interview with Harry. I spoke to them this morning. Harry's attitude is that he's not going to let this affect his life. He also proclaimed he was confident we would deal with the situation. Here was a boon Cornelius could never have imagined, and also an approach he hadn't even considered. I'm assuming this is the approach you wish the ministry to adopt too. To a point, yes. All Aura leave has been cancelled, with some trainees stepping up to fill positions at the ministry to release every available wand for the search. We also warn the public that these two are very dangerous, and not to be approached. We assure them that their ministry is on the case, and doing everything we can to end the situation as quickly as possible. And Harry's protection detail. He requested Aura Tonks. As she was sitting having breakfast with them, I agreed. Cornelius could see the dangers in adopting this approach. It could blow up in their faces if the two missing Death Eaters started slaughtering people. This approach, though, offered the benefit of avoiding mass panic, and perhaps more. Cornelius would much rather see his picture, standing wishing Harry a happy birthday, on the front cover of tomorrow's Prophet, than have two escaped and desperate prisoners occupying that spot. He decided to go with Amelia's suggestion, and hoped they caught these two soon. He could also hope that Gringotts might have some good news for him. Any goblin assistance in this matter would certainly be welcome. The invitations that were also portkeys dropped the invited guests into a reception room in Harry's home, where they were welcomed by 6 armed goblin guards. Remus and Tonks were also there, mainly to assure the guards that the people who arrived were actually invited. None of the Hogwarts contingent were fazed in the slightest by this goblin greeting. All fondly remembered them guarding the castle. The Weasley family's arrival caused a bit of a stir until Tonks confirmed they were all invited. Molly rapidly led her brood out into the garden and the magnificent marquee, and well away from the danger. "Are you sure about that, Tonks? I can't imagine Hermione inviting Ronald Weasley." "I know, she certainly didn't want to. Hermione did want to invite Penny though, which meant Percy, which meant Ron would be home alone. Hermione's just hoping that his mother never lets him out of her sight. With all the food out there, Molly certainly won't have to look hard to find him." Alice sat with Smeeta, watching as their 2 children were greeted warmly by a continual host of friends. "I suppose I should be getting used to shocks, but seeing this is just wonderful. Our children really do have lots of friends. The younger ones all look up to them while the others clearly respect them, and it's not just because of who Harry is either." "I've had longer than you to get used to this, Alice, but those 4 are very tight. We were worried that it was causing problems between our girls, but Parvati is now firmly accepted in their group too. It's something a mother would never tire of watching." Another mother was watching closely too, only watching another couple. Emma was looking at Harry and Hermione greeting the Diggories, and finding that she would have struggled to tell the difference in the ages of the 3 students standing there. Cedric was slightly taller than Harry, though all his training had her son wider at the shoulders. He stood there as a tall, broad and confident teenager, with his arm around his mate's waist. Hermione may only be approaching 14, but she also stood there confidently, looking more like 16, and bearing practically no resemblance to their little girl that left for Scotland by train 2 years ago. Henrika had taught Hermione how to tame her hair, and that attack in the toilet resulted in her teeth all being perfectly aligned. Her body, while lithe, was certainly female. There was no straight up and down, as her latest dress highlighted all too well. She may barely be past Harry's shoulder in terms of height, but that already made her as tall as Emma herself, with Hermione still having some growing to do. The mother found herself thanking every deity she could think of, that while both were certainly physically developed for their respective ages, their mental maturity, if anything, surpassed this. Emma was sure she could rely on them to both act responsibly for a while yet. Sirius was also scanning through the now filling marquee. That was until the marauder spotted the person he was looking for. "Mr. Malfoy, could I have a word, in private? You may of course bring Miss Parkinson." Draco agreed, understanding at once he was speaking with Lord Black here. The couple re-entered the house, with Sirius leading them into a cozy sitting room, before asking them to sit. The door was closed and a silencing charm then erected before Sirius spoke. "Can I assume you are aware of what happened last night in Azkaban?" "Yes, we had a visit from the Auras this morning telling us Father was dead. They also warned us about the escapes, And the message. That makes you effectively the head of the Malfoy family, and this is going to force you to declare a side. I'm asking you this question, but you have the word of Lord Black your answer will go no further than the people in this room. Does your mother carry the dark mark? Pansy let out a gasp. This was a question that should never be asked. Draco answered anyway, no, she's not marked. Both could see the relief Sirius felt at that. They then discovered why he asked. You still won't be able to inherit until you're 17, but I have a proposition for you. I am prepared to loan House Malfoy the gold to have goblin wards erected that will stop Death Eaters entering your property. We both know Bella will turn up there sooner or later. Once she does, your choice will be gone. Now is the time to decide what side you want to be on. For the life of him, Sirius couldn't understand what was making Draco smile at that ultimatum. He was sure he'd explained the situation clearly enough. Mother and I had already discussed the situation, though we never imagined having access to those wards. I have a parchment here, offering you the position of being regent over House Malfoy until I become of age. It was more to stop Pansy's father pushing for the position. The news about last night has been slow to get out. I am not my father, Lord Black. I would be delighted if Death Eaters could no longer enter Malfoy Manor. All I would ask is that you deal with Pansy's father if he tries to renegotiate our betrothal. This had Pansy's full approval. If my father tries to tear us apart, I would consider renouncing my family name. That would also end our betrothal, and I need to know whether you would then set Draco up with someone else. The marauder was left shaking his head at how far these two were prepared to go to remain together. My first act as Harry's godfather was to reject all his betrothals. I didn't know at the time he'd already met his mate. You both seem to know what you want, and I have no intention of meddling with that. All I would say is that renouncing your family name is a very big step. Please don't take it without talking to me first. He looked over the document Draco provided and found it to be exactly as stated. Are you sure you want me to do this? Draco was determined this should go ahead. It had been his suggestion to his mother that resulted in the parchment Sirius now held. We've seen the way you watch over Harry. We experienced being watched over ourselves that week in Florida. It's totally different to what either Pansy or I are used to, yet we both liked it. Our families have shown us one way, you and Harry have shown us another. My father taught me that it was desirable to have others fear you, but what I've seen in my time spent with Harry is respect. I would much rather be respected than feared. With that settled, Sirius signed the document. Amelia and Fudge would be here tonight. Their signatures as witnesses should kill any doubts anyone named Parkinson might raise to the legality of the document. Barchoke would see it filed and organize the wards. Sirius was also going to speak with Harry about the possibility of this couple joining them on the island. Draco had just lost his father, and it would do him good to get away from the situation. Narcissa had walked into that marriage with her eyes open. She had reveled in the good times. Sirius was quite happy to let her stew in the bad. Fred and George had sought out the birthday wizards to offer them a rather unusual gift. I know we have an agreement that says we don't prank you, but it isn't really a prank if we tell you what's going to happen. We've invented this product and thought it would be perfect for the Order of the Aves, and the effects only last for 30 seconds. What do you say? Knowing that Master Pitsley would have looked over anything the twins wanted to try certainly helped Harry make his decision. Him saying yes meant Neville would give it a go too. After eating what they were offered, a pair of loud pops saw Harry and Neville become a couple of little yellow birds. Witches and wizards, available to order soon. We are proud to present Canary Creams. Hermione and Padma were laughing as loud as anyone as their mates flew about the room. They were slightly disappointed both chose to land on the twins' shoulders. That was until they realized what was happening. In a puff of yellow feathers, Harry and Neville reappeared, sitting on Fred and George's shoulders. All four ended up on the floor in a tangled heap of flailing limbs and much laughter. Molly pushed her way through the laughing crowd that had gathered, ready to apologize and then drag the twins away. Instead of her sons being shouted at, she was stopped in her tracks by them being congratulated by the very people who had just been flying about. Ambassador Barchoke was joking with Arthur he should buy some for Gringotts. Slipping them to a few of the bank's more sour-faced customers would certainly liven up the place. Amelia, Cornelius and Ragnarok were glad of the distraction. It enabled them to have their conversation in plain sight. The goblin leader gave them information that Gringotts had to treat as confidential before the murders that took place last night. The Lestrange vault has been locked down for over a decade. Discovering that Riddle had made Horcruxes saw every vault in Gringotts scanned for these abominations. There was one stored in their vault. The item was cleansed of its vile taint without being removed from the customer's vault before we sealed it. With both males being murdered last night, the Lestrange line is now dead. Amelia and Cornelius were following so far. Having a Horcrux stored in your vault was certainly a violation of the Goblin Banking Code. I know you both support the Muggle-born protection scheme Barchok proposed, but there was another group the Death Eaters targeted heavily too, those in positions of power who opposed them. What I'm suggesting is that we waive the time limit in this case and use the Lestrange Vault to purchase wards that would deny Death Eaters access to the homes of those passing laws and judgments against them. It's a lot easier to stand by your convictions if you know your family is safely behind wards that protect them from these animals. Cornelius thought he had the gist of this, but wanted to make sure. So I approached the Wizengamot and asked them to repeal the time limit clause, in this case only, and we then used the gold to protect the Wizengamot members' homes from Death Eater attack. The nation are prepared to overlook the time limit in this case only, unless anyone else is stupid enough to place a Horcrux in their vault. Amelia, if we can't get that unanimously passed through the chamber in under 5 minutes, then both of us should consider retiring. They will basically be voting to have wards erected around their homes for free. Ragnarok mentioned that the tainted item was again something that belonged to a Hogwarts founder, and something that should be returned to the school. They all agreed with that, and also that the Muggle-born families would be protected before their children left for Hogwarts. That meant the Wizengamot members would have to wait until September to begin having these wards installed, though all would be protected before Halloween. Harry had his picture taken with the Minister of Magic and the Director of Gringotts. He also reiterated his belief that things should proceed as normally as possible. I wouldn't like the parents who let their children come here tonight to think we put them in danger so I could have a party. Our wards don't allow Death Eaters access, and we have both auras and warriors protecting the guests from any other threat. While living as normally as possible, it's only common sense to take precautions. I am also confident that everything possible is being done to keep all of us safe and to catch these two escaped Death Eaters. Cornelius was relaxing more with every sentence. Harry spoke to the press. The photographer was also doing his job. Here were people having a great time. These were much better images for the country to see with their breakfast tomorrow. The summer evening saw the marquee remain open on 3 sides. Only the end containing the tables laden with food remained covered. Now that Harry had gotten the official part of the evening over with, he could get back to enjoying himself, dancing with Hermione. With the dance floor illuminated by flickering lanterns, it was a very happy birthday for the boy who had his mate in his arms. Tomorrow they were all heading for the island, and there would be no more thoughts of Death Eaters for a while. Bella had also spent the night in her mate's arms and under canvas. Any dancing they did certainly couldn't be compared to a waltz in Kincossy, though. More last tango in Paris. By following the clearly marked public trails, they had not only made good time, but appeared just like 2 Muggle hikers. It was the following afternoon, before they were approaching a rather ramshackle building, the owners coming out to see who was walking up their path. Amicus was smiling at his sister. The wards usually deterred the Muggles, but occasionally a couple would get through. Then it was time for the siblings to have some fun. Alecto, put that wand away before I take it off you and shove it up your ass. Oh wait, I forgot you like that. The witch in question almost dropped her wand as realization dawned on Alecto just who this was. Bella, is that you? Well, it's certainly not Lucius Malfoy. Bella's cackle at her own wit rang out across the countryside. The colour drained from both Caros almost as quickly as the 2 Death Eaters who'd had their jugulars sliced open. Amicus was not amused. What the fuck are you 2 doing here? The auras will soon be visiting all suspected former Death Eaters. That was the wrong thing to say. He suddenly had a face full of a very angry Bellatrix. There is no such thing as a former Death Eater, unless you want to be like Lucius. You both took our master's mark. That mark is forever. Alecto tried to calm things down. The prophet said they were both armed with wands. Things are different now, Bella. We no longer have our master and our blood status offers no protection. Augustus spoke for the first time. That's why we're here, Alecto. We need to know just what those changes are, and why no one bothered to search for our master. Bella knew this was Augustus' show, but she could certainly unsettle these two while they collected that information. Her control vanished, though, as they entered the house into the kitchen and saw the prophet lying there. Bella snatched it off the table and was soon cursing up a storm. A footnote. We're nothing but a fucking footnote to some baron's birthday party. We need to show these bastards that we're bad news. A few bodies left lying for them to find should do nicely for a start. Not until we return our master, dear. Nothing can get in the way of that. Who is this baron anyway? Both Carrows were astonished at how calmly Bella accepted that rebuke and even let Augustus remove the newspaper from her hands. That's Harry Potter, though he calls himself Crow now. All calmness was now gone as Alecto's words hit home. The paper was snatched back, only for Augustus to lead Bella to the table and spread the paper out so they could both read it. That the Potter brat was on the front page of the Prophet with the Minister of Magic and a goblin was certainly a shock. That the goblin still had his head attached was another. They certainly had a lot of questions for the Carrows. After a few hours' worth of answers, Augustus was beginning to change his opinion. They've forgotten what fear is. I think it's time we reminded them. We need to strike swiftly, and then melt back into the night. They know how we operated before, so that needs to change. We'll start a reign of terror that will wipe the smile off these smug bastards' faces. The Death Eaters will unite behind us and we can build a force that will keep the ministry busy while we search for our master. Bella slid onto his lap. Oh yes, my big strong wizard. Little Bella just loves that idea. She proceeded to show him just how much she loved that idea, leaving a brother and sister sitting there stunned at how their nice quiet lives had just been ripped apart. They had stayed out of trouble in the last war by simply not having anything anyone would covet. They had neither power, possessions, or looks to make anyone give them a second glance. Yes, they were Death Eaters, but so far down the ladder that even the other Death Eaters had forgotten about them. It was just their bad luck that Augustus Rookwood never forgot anything. Peter was wishing he could forget the ritual his master had implanted in his mind. The Dark Lord's method of implanting, though, made that impossible. There could be no mistakes in the task he'd been presented with, and certainly no margins for error. Peter was currently collecting ingredients for a potion he needed to brew. What would take 5 minutes shopping in an apothecary was going to take him weeks of scouring the forests and mountainsides. It was the final ingredient, though, that was giving Peter nightmares. He would have to steal a baby. It wasn't so much the abduction that had the former marauder feeling sick. It was what he was going to have to do to that baby in preparation for his master's consciousness moving from the snake to his new host. The ritual was planned for Halloween, giving him plenty of time to complete all the preparations. If that wasn't enough of a challenge, he then had to sneak back into Britain unnoticed, with a baby and a ruddy great snake. Sometimes Peter really hankered for that little nest he had made for himself in the London Underground.